Hey, everyone! If you enjoy my quantum audiobooks, you can support me by becoming a Patreon member. Your support helps me keep creating, and you'll get exclusive perks. You can also access my audiobooks directly through Google Drive. Check out the link in the description. Now, let's get started.
Taking Wuzon to sunbathe. First update. Although the Kamadou family has actually settled down in this world, that is in Butterfly House. As the medical institution of the Demon Slayer Corps, the address of Butterfly House is also hidden, but it is not as secretive as the headquarters and the Swordsmith Village. But for ordinary people, this is also a very hidden place. If you want to rely on the Butterfly House as a medical institution to survive, you will definitely need to move and rebuild it. However, now everything is over, the Demon Slayer Corps is about to disband, and even though Butterfly House can still continue to operate as a medical institution, the Butterfly House family is obviously going to leave with Yimeng. So, since the family's Butterfly House has left, they naturally have no reason to stay, unless they can accept this isolated life. But obviously, this is impossible, so it is natural that after the matter is over, the Kamadou family will leave this world together with Yimeng and others. It was just a little troublesome for Mitsuri Kanroji, because her family didn't want to be as poor as the Kamadou family, so they couldn't just decide to move. Fortunately, the test has been successful before. The fairy tale world can be connected to the Demon Slayer world through crossing. It's just that the level of the crossing gate is a bit low. You can find Lala to upgrade it later. By then, Mitsuri Kanroji will be able to go back to visit her relatives at any time. The fear emanating from the Demon Slayer Corps behind him naturally caught Tanjiro's attention. Huh, what's wrong with you guys? Although Yimeng used force to scare the members of the Demon Slayer Corps, he actually just switched his dragon eyes slightly and released a warning look. It was just that the gap in life level was too big, so it caused them great psychological pressure and fear. Therefore, Tanjiro, who did not directly meet Yimeng's eyes, naturally did not notice anything unusual. After hearing Tanjiro's words, and with Yimeng retracting his dragon eyes, the members of the Demon Slayer Corps felt the pressure on their bodies disappear and collapse to the ground with exhaustion. Seeing such a big reaction from everyone, Tanjiro became even more confused. "Everyone, what's wrong with you?" Agitsuma Zenitsu, who was lying on the ground, said with a bitter face, "It's nothing. I was just scared by something scary, so my legs are a little weak." Tanjiro was not surprised by Zenitsu Agitsuma's explanation. Although the other party had been tough for a long time since he received the letter from the master, now it seems that he has completed his revenge, so he has turned back to the way he used to be. At least, he didn't smell any deception from the other party, so the other party must have really been a little weak in the knees because of being scared. However, what he couldn't understand was that it was just Zenitsu Agitsuma. But why were other people like this too? Agitsuma Zenitsu seemed to have noticed Tanjiro's confusion and interrupted by asking, "Let's not talk about that for now. Are those people you know, Tanjiro? Can you help me ask how the other party plans to deal with Gue Wu Qianwu? Because of being intimidated by Yimeng, my wife Zenitsu now dares not have any thoughts about the girls around Yimeng." He could also see that the other party had no plans to do anything to them. It might be because the other party knew the girls from Chuya and Tanjiro, so they could be considered as one of his own. At least they would not stand on the side of Muzan Kibutsuji. The reason why the other party would use force to intimidate is also very simple, because the girl who seems to be Tanjiro's sister seems to be a ghost. And the ghost hunters, kill ghosts. They don't intend to let any ghost go. Therefore, in order to prevent unnecessary conflicts, the other party simply took the initiative and made them behave themselves. However, the facts also proved that the other party had no intention of doing anything to them. But if your eyes are not honest, then you can't say for sure. But first of all, he still needs to ask everyone clearly, who are these people? Is that trap guy really Gue Wu Qianwu? In other words, how does the other party plan to deal with Muzan Kibutsuji? These are things that the Demon Slayer Corps cares about extremely. If possible, they would rather eliminate Muzan Kibutsuji now. Only in this way can they truly feel at ease. However, this man doesn't seem to be easy to talk to strangers, so I can only ask Tanjiro's family member to help inquire about his attitude. Upon hearing this, Tanjiro finally remembered that their Demon Slayer Corps was fighting the final battle with Musen Kibutsuji. Q. Afterwards, Tanjiro also asked Yimeng, "Brother Yimeng, what are you going to do with this Musen Kibutsuji? This guy is simply not worthy of living in this world." Although he was not accompanied by Nezuko in the original novel along the way, what he experienced was similar to the original novel. So Tanjiro still saw with his own eyes that in order to cover up his whereabouts, Musen Kibutsuji casually turned passersby in a ghost to create chaos. And those lower-ranked demons in the Infinite City are also temporary, disposable consumables. Even if they don't kill them, these lower-ranking beings will eventually self-destruct and die because they can't withstand the power in their bodies. From here, Tanjiro already knew what kind of attitude Musen Kibutsuji had towards life. Yimeng didn't think twice before saying, "Take it out to bask in the sun." Hearing Yimeng's words, Tanjiro was stunned for a moment. Then he immediately reacted, and his expression began to become excited. Although Musen Kibutsuji, as the king of demons, should also have the characteristic of being unable to be killed by the Nichiren sword, he still cannot avoid retaining the weakness that demons fear the most. Therefore, the meaning of Yi Meng's suggestion to take Musen Kibutsuji out to bask in the sun is almost self-evident. The other members of the Demon Slayer Corps around them naturally also heard Yi Meng's decision. After confirming that Yi Meng really intended to take Musen Kibutsuji to bask in the sun, all the members of the Demon Slayer Corps became excited. However, they did not leave just like that, because Yi Meng didn't seem to have any intention of driving them away, so they naturally didn't think of leaving so soon. Since the other party did not drive them away, they naturally wanted to see with their own eyes that Musen Kibutsuji was completely wiped out from this world. However, seeing Yi Meng and the others suddenly start barbecuing there very naturally, everyone in the Demon Slayer Corps didn't know what to say for a moment. For a moment, everyone felt very strange. This is a battlefield now. But now, these people actually have no sense of crisis at all and are just holding a barbecue party here. However, smelling the tempting aroma, the two people who had a very good relationship with Tanjiro, Zenitsu Agatsuma and Inosuke Hashibara, were no longer so restrained. Of course, the main one was Inosuke Hashibara. This guy just joined in without any hesitation and took it for granted. Yi Meng did not refuse this. After all, barbecue is meant to be enjoyed by everyone eating together. Like that, because Yi Meng did not refuse these people's joining, gradually, all the members of the Demon Slayer Corps joined in. There's no way. After a night of intense fighting, now that we're suddenly relaxing, everyone feels physically and mentally exhausted. If they hadn't seen Musen Kibutsuji still trying frantically to break free from his confinement, making them worry that this guy might run out at any time, they would have just laid down and fallen asleep. Therefore, they did not intend to relax until they saw with their own eyes that Musen Kibutsuji was completely destroyed by the sun. However, it would definitely be okay to eat something first to replenish your energy. Of course, Yi Meng wouldn't be the only one responsible for the food and barbecue for all of them in the Demon Slayer Corps. Those members of the Demon Slayer Corps, with relatively low combat power, also began to prepare. They didn't know whether this confinement could really last until the sun rose, but at least even if Musen Kibutsuji broke through, they could die of fullness in the end. In this way, the barbecue dinner continued until the sun rose in the morning. Until this moment, everyone's emotions began to get excited. Although this final battle was somewhat anticlimactic, but no matter what, the ghost dance will finally be eliminated. And most importantly, they all survived. In fact, all those who participated in this battle were mentally prepared that they would not survive to the end. However, in order to completely put an end to all the ghosts in their era, to ensure a bright future for them, and to avenge their dead family members, they all chose to join the war without hesitation. However, what surprised everyone was that, apart from the unlucky ones who died at the beginning, the survival rate of those who participated in this final battle was almost 80%. How could they not be excited? Because they survived to the end. especially after they saw with their own eyes that Muzin Kibutsuji was burned to ashes by the sun. The huge stone that had been weighing on their hearts finally fell. However, when they came to their senses and wanted to thank Yi Meng for helping them avoid greater losses, they found that Yi Meng and others had left at some point. However, what surprised Yi Meng was that Shun Yu's family and the Ubuyashiki family acted really quickly. After learning about the background story of Tanjiro's ancestors, in order to win over Tanjiro or to indirectly win over Yi Meng to help them, they let their own children hook up with several boys of the Kamadu family early on. Only Kamadu Hanako's life wasn't going so well, because she was saved by Yi Meng, and having seen Yi Meng's various magical abilities, she looked down on the boys of the Rengoku and Ubuyashiki families. But there's nothing that can be done about it, as the only ones of similar age to Hadakato are Ubuya Moriya and Rengoku Chijuro. But unfortunately, one of these two guys looks too much like a girl, and the other has a very weak personality. So, after seeing what true strong masculinity is from Yi Meng, Kamadu Hanako completely looks down on these two boys who seem to want to get along with her. After noticing this, Kamadu Aoi did not show any intention of refusing. She knew very well that the era of cannibalism would end, and it would not last long, so the disbanding of the Demon Slayer Corps was a matter of time. Therefore, when she noticed that the ruling family of the Demon Slayer Corps, Ubuyashiki, was interested in making friends with Tanjiro and the others, Aoi Kamadu naturally would not refuse. Because in this way, Tanjiro and the others would be considered to be married into Gamen. And as long as Tanjiro is strong enough and successfully achieves great enough achievements, there's no need to worry that Tanjiro will suffer in Ubuyashiki's house. And most importantly, she still knows the principle of not putting all eggs in one basket. Although she didn't think Yi Meng would harm them, who could know that the place where Yi Meng was wouldn't be dangerous? Or, as 4.0 said, even though it wasn't dangerous to Yi Meng and the others, was it really not dangerous for them, who even risked their lives to fight against cannibals? And there is no doubt that Tanjiro and his brothers are the roots of the Kamadu family. Therefore, in order to let all the male members of the Kamadu family stay in this world and not live too badly, Kamadu Aoi would naturally not refuse the kindness of the Ubuyashiki family, and would even help them to make connections. Therefore, several boys, led by Tanjiro, chose to stay in this world because of their bonds. Yi Meng naturally didn't say much about this. This way, Yi Meng doesn't have to worry about how to arrange them. And since Tanjiro and the other men had no plans to leave together, Yi Meng's original arrangement for Kamadu Aoi could naturally be a little bolder. For example, let them live directly in your own home. This kind of arrangement would definitely not be possible if there were other men present. But now, since only Kamadu Aoi and Kamadu Hanako have decided to leave with them, there's naturally no problem. As for the two friends, Zenitsu Agitsuma and Inosuke Hashibara, who have been working with Tanjiro since the haunted house, they naturally continue to follow Tanjiro. Although Yi Meng had no intention of taking them away at first, there's no way around it. Agitsuma Zenitsu's situation makes it easy for him to provoke his own sister. Because he used to be an anime otaku, Yi Meng had a good impression of these people, so he didn't want to choose 23 to attack each other because of this kind of thing. So just cut off this possibility completely. Although Inosuke Hashibara is not as exaggerated as Zenitsu Agitsuma, he also ended up with Kamiki in the original work, so the reason is the same as above. Yi Meng didn't want to be attacked by the Minotaur. After Yi Meng and others returned to Butterfly House, they started packing their luggage. Of course, under normal circumstances, this is not necessary. After all, Yi Meng has plenty of money and can go directly to the demon-slaying world and buy things there. However, there are still many people in the Butterfly House who did not participate in the final battle, such as Shun Chikue and 3 little kids. Since the 3 Butterfly sisters are leaving with Yi Meng, we naturally cannot leave them alone. After all, to them, everyone in the Butterfly Room is one family. Shin Chikue was also a little surprised when she heard Kocho Shinobu's instructions. Huh? Packing? Don't you need to prepare for treatment? Seeing everyone return safely without any sadness on their faces, and with the appearance of Yi Meng, Shun Shikue could basically conclude that their Demon Slayer Corps had successfully wiped out Muzan Kibutsuji, the culprit who brought tragedy to their Demon Slayer Corps. But even if we win, is there no one injured in this battle? After Shinobu Kocho came back, instead of arranging any treatment, she just told them to pack their bags and get ready to leave? Of course, Shun Shikue had no objection to Shinobu Kocho's instructions. After all, although the owner of the Butterfly House is the eldest sister, Butterfly Kane, but in fact, Butterfly Shinobu is the real #1 commander of the Butterfly House. Her authority in property and medical aspects is even far greater than that of the eldest sister, Butterfly Kane. Although Kane Kocho has the advantage in strength and age and is the real big sister of the Butterfly House, Shinobu Kocho is more authoritative in the medical field. Although Kane Kocho was exposed to family medical knowledge earlier, Shinobu Kocho was a natural pharmacist. Without systematic training, she successfully made medicine using only the plants in her garden. Therefore, Shinobu Kocho's talent and achievements in medicine are higher than her sister's. In fact, Kane Kocho can only be her assistant. Therefore, since the establishment of Butterfly House, there's been a well-known default rule. Listen to Butterfly Kane on small matters and obey Butterfly Shinobu on big matters. Coupled with Kane Kocho's innocent personality, there's a rule of listen to the eldest sister for small matters and listen to the second sister for big matters. Moreover, she is now the third in command of the medical staff. She is the one who arranges all matters besides medical care in the Butterfly House. Shin Shikue knows exactly what to do and when. However, Shinobu Kocho's arrangement this time was indeed a little beyond her expectations. Hearing Shun Chikue's surprise, Kocho Shinobu smiled and said, "Well, this time Yimeng took direct action. Aside from the unlucky guy who died at the beginning, the other members of the Demon Slayer Corps were basically unharmed. The rest can be left to the plants." Upon hearing this, Shun Chikue was puzzled as to why they were in such a hurry to leave, but she did not object. After all, 2 years ago, before Yimeng was about to leave, he had already wanted to take everyone in the Butterfly House with him. However, due to the responsibilities of the Demon Slayer Corps, they couldn't just leave with Yimeng. But now, since Yimeng appeared again and dealt with Muzan Kibutsuji, they naturally had no reason to continue refusing. I just didn't expect that Shinobu Kocho would just ignore those members who might still be injured and just leave. However, considering that their Butterfly House is not the only medical institution in the Demon Slayer Corps, and that there are plants with unique therapeutic effects, Shun Chikue did not say anything more. There was no need to bring much with them. After all, everyone in the Butterfly House will be taken care of by Yimeng. All they needed to take away were some things they cared about and some spare clothes. Therefore, it is very quick to clean up. However, before leaving, Kocho Kane and others were very considerate and prepared the treatment methods and corresponding medicines that had been prepared long ago, placed them there, and marked them with labels. This was the last thing they did for Demon Slayer Corps 697. The reason why Ubuyashiki Kanzuya wanted to win over the Kamadu family was actually very simple. This had actually been planned in advance before Yimeng left last time. Apart from the people of Chuya, only the Hadamon family and Mitsuri Kanroji's family can command the use of these special plants. Therefore, after noticing that only these 3 families could use these special plants, and in order to grasp this power or the interests and status represented by these plants, Ubuyashiki Koya let his children make friends with the Kamadu family. Therefore, the person that Ubuyashiki Yoya values most is actually Kamadu Hanako, the only girl in the Kamadu family. Because in this way, they can transfer this authority to the main line of their Ubuyashiki clan by having Kamadu Hanako join their Ubuyashiki clan. It's a pity that because of Yimeng, Kamadu Hanako completely looks down on Ubuyashiki Teriyaki, the young southern girl. Although Ubuyashiki Teriyaki was indeed good-looking, for Kamadu Hanako, who had died once before, she wanted a strong man who could give her enough sense of security, rather than a little Nanyang who looked even weaker than she was. This was also part of Yimeng's plan. Yimeng was well aware of the benefits and influence these plants could bring to their holders. Although these things are nothing to Yi Meng, they could determine the status and influence of the Xiamen family and the Ganlu Temple family in this country and even in the world. At the same time, it can also be regarded as a suitable betrothal gift to Nezuko's family. After everything was packed up, everyone in the butterfly house took a last reluctant look at the butterfly house where they had lived for many years, and then followed Yi Meng to quietly leave this world. After arriving at the fairy tale world, everyone was attracted by the scenery here. Because the place Yi Meng returned to was the place he left last time, it was a very spacious and warm village. The last time Yi Meng came back, he did not return to Fairy Tale's villa, but went directly to the cloak space. When Shinobu Kocho saw the surrounding environment, she was also a little surprised. "Is this your home, Yi Meng? It doesn't seem that special, does it?" Although the style seems a bit novel, it is obvious at first glance that this is a place similar to the countryside, and it does not give them the shocking feeling they imagined. Yi Meng also shook his head and said, "No, this is where I did my last mission. We're going home next." After saying that, Yi Meng also made a loud noise. A space portal connecting to another place appeared in front of everyone. Mitsuri Kanroji and the Butterfly Sisters almost subconsciously placed their hands on the hilt of the knife, looking alert. Seeing the three people's dedicated reactions, Yi Meng said with a bit of a smile, "This is no longer your original world. Vampire magic is called magic here. Anyone can learn. Just like the somersault cloud I gave you, it is also a creation of magic or extraordinary experience." After hearing what Yi Meng said, the three girls suddenly remembered that this was no longer their original world. However, they still found it a little hard to believe. After all, not long ago, in their cognition, only ghosts could use extraordinary powers, and humans could only chop one by one. But what about now? Anyone in this world can obtain this extraordinary supernatural power. So these three professional ghost hunters naturally found it very unbelievable. However, thinking of the powerful strength that Yi Meng had given them, it suddenly seemed that it was not something unacceptable. After all, to be honest, they're also the owners of extraordinary powers. Thinking of this, the three women suddenly realized something. They seemed to understand why Yi Meng wanted to take them away so much. Because in their original world, only the Wei had the ability to use supernatural powers beyond common sense. And now they also hold this power. The sun-breathing method is okay. After all, basically everyone can use it. However, the other powers that Yi Meng gave them were almost the same as those used by the vampire magic. Maybe no one will care at first, but what will happen after a long time? They can't guarantee that their former fellow members of the Demon Slayer Corps will not slander them, because they are jealous of the powerful powers they have gained through their beauty. Therefore, if time goes on, it is very likely that they will be treated as demons by their former Demon Slayer comrades. Maybe it's okay while the ghosts are still around, but what if all the ghosts are eliminated? Once people have free time, they will think too much. So, you wanted us to go with you because you were worried that we would be mistaken for ghosts. Because she had already tacitly agreed that she would only belong to Yi Meng in the future. Shinobu Kocho had no intention of being polite to Yi Meng and just said whatever she thought. Well, it's obvious that with the return of Kane Kocho, Shinobu Kocho's personality has somewhat returned to what it was before. But Yi Meng was very happy about this. After all, although Shinobu Kocho in the past and in the original work gave people a very gentle feeling, she also revealed a sense of unreality. But now, with the return of Kane Kocho, Shinobu Kocho's smile is no longer fake. That's right, looking at Shinobu Kocho, who is now smiling and looking righteous, coupled with her petite figure 151 centimeters. Oh no, height! This also made Yi Meng think of a certain not-so-good word. For example, female, etc. Although I will feel inexplicably excited. Looking at Shinobu Kocho, whose personality was obviously more straightforward and lively than he had imagined, Yi Meng caressed her head lovingly and said with a smile, "It can't be helped. I'm a philandering man. Since I can't give you my undivided love, I can only do my best to prevent you from suffering the humiliation that has befallen me. And in this case, you will have no choice but to leave with me, right? But after thinking about it, it's only a year or two away. Something like that, getting to know Li and Zhao. Shouldn't happen in the short term, right? After all, before you gain power, you already had those special plants left by Meng Meng as a foundation. In fact, they all agree with Yi Meng's statement. Especially Mitsuri Kenroji, she had already agreed to be with Yi Meng the last time they met. However, due to her responsibility as a pillar of the Demon Slayer Corps, she couldn't easily abandon her companions and leave Yi Meng. However, Shinobu Kocho still approved of Yi Meng's attitude. As he himself said, he had other women before them, and he was a complete philandering scumbag. But at least, although Yi Meng is indeed a philandering scumbag, they have to admit that his attitude still makes them quite satisfied. Okay, without further ado, let's go in and leave here. Afterwards, Yi Meng directly opened the big villa that led directly to the fairy tale world. After landing, the women were even more shocked. There's no way. This place is just too luxurious. It can even be said to be more gorgeous than any castle they had ever imagined. This also made them feel a great sense of unreality. Is this really a place where ordinary people like them can live? I always feel that even if I just step on the ground, it is a blasphemy to the buildings here. Even Shinobu Kocho, who has a strong personality, seemed a little unsure at this moment. Although she is already a pillar-level demon hunter in the Demon Slayer Corps and possesses great strength and status. In fact, they have never regarded this as their capital to show off. Song regards it as a heavy responsibility that matches her strength. I feel from the bottom of my heart that I am just an ordinary person whose abilities are better than most people. Well, after all, there is no real sense in which 003 becomes some kind of authority. Yi Meng also smiled and said, "We built this ourselves. This is a magical world. As long as you have the ability, you can find an empty space and build it yourself. The difference is how long it takes you to build it, whether it's safe, and how well you can build it." After hearing what Yi Meng said, the girls in Demon Slayer World also noticed that the location of this villa seemed to be in the wild forest. If that's the case, they can accept it, because buying and building by yourself are two completely different concepts. The former is a gap in economic class, while the latter is a gap in hands-on ability. But for those of them who consider themselves ordinary people, the latter is obviously not more acceptable. Afterwards, Yi Meng also let the girls choose rooms in the villa. Fortunately, Yi Meng was self-aware and knew that he would not be able to control his desires in the future and would flirt with many girls, so he prepared a lot of rooms in advance. Moreover, it was built according to the folding space that Lala modified after her two sisters arrived in the original work. This also makes it convenient for girls who like to hang out together to live in the same place, while still having a certain amount of private space. Look, apart from Lala and the others, I brought back almost 10 people on this first mission. Although there are only 5 people he wants to capture, and although he doesn't care as much about the remaining ones as he does the 5 he values most, it doesn't mean that Yi Meng will let them go so easily. After all, after eating delicacies from land and sea, it would be nice to have some simple meals occasionally, right? After all men are like that. As long as the looks are not too disappointing to the audience. Basically anything good-looking can be eaten. Not to mention, anyone who is picked by Yi Meng and brought back must be pretty good. After helping to arrange the room area belonging to their Demon Slayer camp and choosing their respective rooms, Yi Meng took them to the Fairy Tale Guild. Along the way, Shinobu Kocho couldn't help but ask curiously, "By the way, what exactly does your Fairy Tale Guild do?" Although Yi Meng said that he came from an organization called Fairy Tale, he did not specify what this place called a guild did. Yi Meng thought for a moment after hearing this and said, "To put it simply, someone entrusts you with a task, and then you just go and complete it. Like subjugating, searching, delivering messages, protecting, collecting materials, etc. Basically, it has everything." Upon hearing this, Kocho Shinobu couldn't help but frown and said, "Is it really that messy?" Yi Meng also shrugged and said, "Basically, there is nothing you can't think of that others can't entrust you with. After all, The nature of a guild is basically that you pay money and I help you solve your problems. Of course, because this is a magical world, most people don't make a living by conquering. Although Yimeng had only been in the fairy tale world for a few days, he had a general understanding of the tasks that the magic guilds in this world usually performed. Not surprisingly, because of the existence of magic in this world, animals in the wild are generally very powerful. Wild beasts that are already stronger than ordinary humans will also suddenly mutate and become stronger because the magic suddenly becomes rich in a certain place. In this case, we can only ask someone to help clear it out. Although there's a royal army in this world, it is mainly used to defend national security. Therefore, it is basically difficult to free up the troops to be dispatched to places too far away from the capital to eliminate these monsters. And because powerful monsters may appear at any time, the land development rate in this world is not very high. After all, even if you open up a territory, how many people can withstand the attacks of monsters? I'm afraid I can't even save my own life. Therefore, unless there's a guild with powerful military force taking the lead, ordinary people generally would not be willing to open up new land. What's more, even if this land is opened up, it does not belong to you but to this country. If that's the case, then why would they go to such trouble to do something that is sure to lose money and may even cost them their lives? In addition, there are also countless dark guilds, dark magicians, etc. Therefore, subjugation-type quests account for almost all types of guild-assigned quests. Upon hearing this, the girls couldn't help but become a little nervous. Is this world so dangerous? Originally, they thought that after dealing with the cannibal issue in their world, they would no longer encounter any danger. Unexpectedly, this world is even more dangerous. The man-eating ghosts in their original world at least have a source of birth. As long as Musen Kabut Suji is eliminated, all the dangers will disappear at once. But what about this world? The monsters in this world originate from a kind of magical power that all living things possess. And this thing is everywhere, which means that if you are too unlucky, this monster may even suddenly appear in your house. It's even more outrageous than the cannibals in their world. Seeing those powerless women who were obviously afraid of regretting their actions, Yimeng smiled and said, I just said there are these tasks. I don't necessarily want you to fight these monsters. If you don't want to fight, you can choose to do other tasks. At worst, you can open a butterfly house there and continue to work as a medical staff. It just so happens that since most of the commission missions are combat-based subjugation missions, it's easy for everyone in the guild to return with injuries. It wouldn't be bad if your clinic was there. Although Fairy Tale also has a medical staff member named Pelusica because he hates humans very much, the people in the guild basically won't seek trouble unless they are seriously injured. Makarov would certainly welcome people with healing abilities to join the Fairy Tale Guild. Moreover, according to what Yimeng learned from Makarov, people who mastered healing magic in this world were extremely rare, and most of them were pharmaceutical doctors. I can easily handle the clinic, but this is a different world from yours, so you probably need to start from scratch and learn about the medical knowledge of this world. Upon hearing this, Kocho Shinobu smiled and said, Don't worry. As long as it's something related to medicine, I can learn it quickly. But it would be best if I could have a professional doctor to teach me. After all, no matter how talented Shinobu Kocho is, she can't learn as fast as a good teacher by self-study. Yimeng nodded and said, Okay, I'll ask for you when we get to the guild. But based on Fairy Tale situation, there must be one. Listening to Yimeng's words, Shinobu Kocho couldn't help but wonder, why are you so willing to leave? And aren't you from Fairy Tale? How come you don't even know about this? Yimeng shrugged and said, Well, that's true. I've actually only just joined. By the way, I'm the only one in this world who has the ability to go to other worlds to carry out commission tasks. So remember to keep this a secret and don't tell anyone else about it. Hearing Yimeng's words, the girls were also a little surprised. Obviously, they thought Fairy Tale was like Yimeng and could go to other worlds to complete commission tasks, but they didn't expect that this was a special ability that belonged only to Yimeng. Also, every time I complete a mission in another world, I get some special rewards, such as props and abilities. However, what I get depends on the situation in that world. So, if I encounter any commission missions suitable for you to improve your strength in the future, I will take you with me. It doesn't matter if you don't want to go or can't go. If there's anything suitable for you, I'll bring it with you. After all, you're all mine now, so I have to take better care of you, right? Upon hearing this, the girls blushed in embarrassment. Soon, under the leadership of Yimeng, everyone finally arrived at the entrance of the Fairy Tale Guild. However, after Yimeng brought them to Fairy Tale, they finally understood why Yimeng said that it would be very promising for them to open a clinic here. Because these guys in the guild are definitely profiteers and saboteurs. Before, they were looking forward to what the Fairy Tale Guild would be like, but now, seeing everyone's reaction, Yimeng smiled and said, "Why? Are you disappointed?" Shinobu Kocho said speechlessly, "This is totally a violent organization. Requesting flowers. Because the Demon Slayer Corps has a small number of members, there has always been a rule within the organization that prohibits violence between companions. This is to prevent people from delaying their work due to quarrels or even being taken advantage of by ghosts and losing their lives. Therefore, people like Shinobu Kocho, who have been in the Demon Slayer Corps for quite some time, naturally look down upon this kind of infighting. But maybe it was an illusion, but even though they were clearly watching the Fairy Tale Guild fighting fiercely, the atmosphere here didn't seem particularly hostile to them. It's like, at this moment, Chungzi also guessed carefully with an expression of disbelief. It feels like a family that is having a bad temper. 0. Upon hearing this, Shinobu Kocho and the others nodded in agreement. Although it did look chaotic, it didn't look like the usual chaos they saw in group fights. Well, it's pretty confusing. At least on the surface, it looked quite chaotic, but they could not sense any signs of being out of control on these people's faces or in their emotions, as if everyone in the group fight was acting with restraint. At least, these people's fights will not give them the fear and uneasiness that comes from witnessing violent scenes. Yimeng also smiled and said, "This is the uniqueness of Fairy Tale. Although it looks very noisy here, everyone in the guild actually treats everyone in the guild as family. Those who fight here never use their defeat as a vengeance to target others. They simply think their own strength is insufficient and then quietly improve themselves, waiting to win again next time. Furthermore, this is also part of the daily training for Fairy Tale Guild members to learn from each other and improve each other. The members of Fairy Tale's Guild aren't actually that hardworking. This is evident from the frequency with which they accept quests. I usually only take on missions after I've spent most of my money. The only time I'm a bit diligent is probably during the month of the S-Class Wizard promotion exam. And for the people of Fairy Tale, fighting is part of their training. Besides, how can blindfolded training be as fast as actual combat? So, everyone in the guild rarely trains on their own, and they basically advance through fighting. Furthermore, if powerful people can't vent their emotions, they're prone to psychological problems, which can have negative consequences. So, while their actions may appear violent and chaotic, the benefits they gain from them are still acceptable. At least they are very measured when they act now, and they won't let their inner frustration lead to a sexual outburst when they can no longer bear it and cause irreparable mistakes. After hearing Yimeng's words, everyone was also very surprised and curious. They didn't expect that appropriate violence was a novel concept to prevent bigger mistakes from being made. Okay, all of you come with me and join Fairy Tale. After hearing Yimeng's words, Shinobu Kocho followed everyone else's lead and asked, "Just joining right away? There's no entrance exam or anything like that." Yimeng shrugged and said, "I don't know if other guilds have it, but Fairy Tale definitely doesn't. Basically, as long as you master magic or have enough power to complete your quests, you can basically join. It's hard to say about these little guys, but you, Shinobu, Kane, Mitsuri Nizuko, and Kana, you guys will definitely be fine. Xiao Kuei can also join Fairy Tale as a medical staff member. Others can work as waiters or continue to take care of patients as before." After hearing what Yimeng said, everyone's originally worried mood was relieved. Afterwards, Yimeng brought everyone from Demon Slayer to the guild bar. Makarov was like a fixed NPC, sitting at the bar and watching the people fighting with no intention of stopping them. As Yimeng said, on the one hand, it is to allow these children to vent their excess energy and accumulated emotions, and on the other hand, it is also to use this practical method to improve each other's strength. Therefore, he will basically not intervene until the situation develops to a certain extent. Mira Jane and Mira Jane, who were working as waitresses at the bar, greeted Yimeng in unison when they saw him return. "Welcome back," Yimeng *2. Because the two look 100% similar, no one would doubt that they are twin sisters, so they have now become the new signature scenery of the Fairy Tale Guild. Seeing the two Miris greet him in unison, Yimeng also asked with a smile, "Well, I'm back. About how long was I gone?" Mira Jane, who had been asked to help calculate the time in advance, said without hesitation, "It's been about 7 or 8 days. If you count from the day you set out on the mission together, it would be 8 days. Yimeng nodded upon hearing this. "Yes, thank you. This way we can basically confirm that the time travel time is 1:1. On the first day, I traveled through time with Meng Meng, resurrected Kine at night, and then went to Kumatorshi Mountain again to rescue Nezuko and stayed there for another day. The next day, the family moved to Butterfly House and stayed there for a day. On the third day, he temporarily returned to the fairy tale world, and then worked hard for 3 days to speed up the fusion process for Nezuko. On the 7th day, he dealt with Muzan Kibutsuji and then returned to Fairy Tale with the ghost of the other world. If you add the time spent accompanying Nana and the others on the commission tasks, it is exactly 8 days. Then, Yimeng asked again, "By the way, where are Lala and the others? I didn't see them when I got home just now. Did they go out to do a commission?" Mira Jane, who was standing by, also smiled and said, "Competent newcomers are usually very hard-working when they first join the guild. To put it bluntly, it's a matter of freshness or a matter of fleeting enthusiasm. For those who are incompetent, the first task can make your enthusiasm disappear instantly, while those who are competent can naturally complete various entrusted tasks easily. In addition, since they have just joined, their enthusiasm for work is naturally very high. Coupled with Lala's personality, she can be said to have been completing tasks like crazy during this period. In addition to the convenience brought by the portal, Lala can return a fairy tale instantly after completing the task. If she happens to be connected to a marked place, she can reach her destination instantly. It can be said that the number of tasks completed in just this week is almost equivalent to the total accumulated by any other guild member in 10 years. It can be said to be quite crazy. Moreover, because Lala is a warm and friendly person, people in the guild can directly use the portal created by Lala to reach their destination directly. Even if it is a place you have never been to, you can go to the vicinity and then have someone set up a teleportation location there, which will be used by others when they need to come to this place again in the future. It can be said that the efficiency of the entire fairy tale has at least doubled in 0.4. Of course, the people in the guild did not take advantage of Lala for nothing. Every time they used her, they would pay Lala the equivalent of the round-trip fare, which was usually collected by the front desk. Although the fare was about the same as my previous trip, it took a lot longer. The only pity is that because they are worried that the transmission device will be damaged, they basically only have one-way tickets for the departure, and they still have to find a way to return on their own. However, Lala has her own teleporter, and Angelica also has the ability to instantly teleport people back to Fairy Tale, so there are basically no restrictions on round trips. If anyone happens to be near Lala and the others, they can hitch a ride and quickly return to Fairy Tale together. After hearing that Lala had taken people out to do another commission mission, Yimeng smiled helplessly and said, "It seems that Lala is really bored at home. Now that she finally gets to go out and play, she doesn't even want to go home." Mira Jane also smiled and said, "It does feel that way." After thinking about it for a while, Mira Jane also found that Lala really liked to run around and didn't want to go home. At this moment, Makarov also noticed that Yimeng and others had returned, and they had brought back so many people. He was also a little surprised and asked, "Huh? Yimeng, you are back? And you brought back so many people? Are you the client?" Because he could not sense any magic power from them, Makarov thought that these people were his clients. Yimeng shook his head and said, "No, they all came to join Fairy Tale." Hearing Yimeng's words, Makarov couldn't help but frown. Yiming, you have to know that although we at Fairy Tale do accept all who come, the missions commissioned by the Wizards Guild are bound to be accompanied by danger. Yiming also smiled and said, "Don't worry, old man. They are swordsmen, and most of them have the strength of at least 11 mages." After hearing Yiming's words, Makarov once again looked at the swords carried by these people. When they came to him, Makarov noticed that these people were all carrying weapons, but he didn't care much. After all, swordsmen with at least the strength of a B-rank wizard are still very rare. However, this is a world where magic is supreme. Even if you carry a weapon with you, as long as you don't have magic power in your body, you are destined to be ignored. As if sensing Makarov's concerns, Yiming smiled and said, "Don't worry, old man. Since I've decided to bring them into Fairy Tale, I'll be responsible for improving their abilities. As for when they can officially accept commissions, you have the final say. Also, not all of them are good at fighting. They all used to work in the medical field, so I plan to set up a clinic nearby. They can just join as peripheral members of Fairy Tale. They just need a place to shelter them and live a stable life." Upon hearing this, Makarov nodded and said, "If that's the case, then I don't have any objections." Yiming was the benefactor of the Fairy Tale Guild and was now a member of the guild, so as long as the request was not too excessive, he would basically not refuse. Yiming's current request is also very simple. He just needs to prove that they are members of the guild and provide them with a stable guarantee so that they will not be bullied. This is similar to the guild's image girls and waiters. And most importantly, these people focus on medical work, which just makes up for the embarrassing situation that their guild does not have enough medical personnel, although this situation occurs in all guilds. Therefore, all guilds actually cooperate with local clinics, hospitals, and other medical institutions, because this way, people in the guild can get treatment cheaper. Fairy Tale mainly relies on Pelushika, and other than that, it basically has to withstand everything on its own. Although there are other medical institutions in Magnolia, they're not very suitable for Fairy Tale. After all, if the injury is serious, with Pelusica around, there is no point in going to those small clinics. If the injury is minor, they will choose to fight it themselves. Don't ask why. The reason is that I don't have money. Fairy Tale members are basically all vandals. Every time they complete a mission, they will receive complaints and be compensated. In addition to the daily expenses, this also leads to the fact that they basically cannot save money. It was the recent joining of Wendy that improved this embarrassing situation. Of course, the fee was based on the severity of the injury, as they were embarrassed to take advantage of a little lowly's hard work for free. However, compared to the cost of medical treatment in a clinic, it was obviously much cheaper. Moreover, if it is just a minor injury, Wendy will simply not charge any money and just treat it as a contact with healing magic. However, Wendy's healing magic can only treat external injuries and is obviously powerless against those diseases. Now that Yiming has brought so many medical personnel who can be exclusively used by the Fairy Tale Guild, Makarov is naturally very happy. At this moment, Yiming suddenly interrupted, "But, old man, don't be too happy. I brought them back from another world, so I can't guarantee that the things in the two worlds are the same. So I need you to help find someone with good medical skills to take care of them. At the very least, you have to let them learn about medicine in this world on their own for a while." 560. When Makarov heard Yiming's words, he was stunned. "Other worlds? No. Didn't you just come here from the world of Edolas? How can you travel to other worlds at will?" Seeing Makarov's look of disbelief, Yiming added, "Lala and the others aren't from the world of Edolas either. Even Lala and I aren't from the same world. Also, if nothing unexpected happens, there will probably be many people from other worlds who want to join Fairy Tale in the future. This can be considered as helping to strengthen Fairy Tale." Hearing this, Makarov couldn't help but look at the women behind Yiming who had been brought back, and said speechlessly, "Are you sure that the ones you brought back weren't your harem?" Yiming, "Hey, my Fairy Tale is not your personal harem." Makarov was also speechless. Yiming not only likes to flirt with other girls outside, but he also likes to bring them back home. He was really afraid that one day these women brought back by Yiming would tear down Fairy Tale. Because of Yiming, in the end, Makarov did not refuse the women of Demon Slayer from joining Fairy Tail. Anyway, for him, anyone with good intentions and ability can join Fairy Tail at any time. But let me make this clear first. If the guild is dismantled because of your woman, I will not forgive you. Upon hearing this, Yimeng rubbed his chin and said, then it seems I'll have to set up a guild, or some kind of organization, institution, or something like that. Although Yimeng originally thought of just bringing the person back to Fairy Tail. But after thinking about it carefully, according to his own situation, he would bring back more and more girls in the future. In this case, it would be inappropriate to place her in a guild where there are other men. Sure enough, I was a little careless in doing things. Makarov nodded and said, if you continue to bring other women back in the future, then I would indeed suggest that you form your own guild or faction, just like you were planning to set up a clinic for them now. After all, you don't want your woman to be around other men, do you? Although Makarov does treat everyone in the guild as his own children, he also has normal values and outlook on life. So in a situation like Yimeng, Makarov must have given him a reminder. Yimeng nodded and said, well, thank you for your advice, old man. Regardless of whether I will become independent in the future, we will all be Fairy Tail family members. It's not for anything else, just because we all joined Fairy Tail. Makarov smiled upon hearing this and said, that's good. As a result, everyone in Demon Slayer world easily joined Fairy Tail and obtained a Fairy Tail guild emblem. However, if they want to accept the commission task, they need to prove their own strength first. Although Yimeng said that their strength was at least that of a B-class wizard, they did not have any magic power in their bodies after all. So Makarov was a little unsure of how strong they were. So you need to check it out yourself. Of course, there is no need for Makarov to take action himself. He is not blind. It is obvious that the girls here have a very close relationship with Yimeng. Therefore, it is natural that you cannot do such things that offend others. Then, Makarov suddenly turned from a short old man into a giant almost as tall as the ceiling in front of the unbelievable expressions of the demon slayers and slapped the people who were fighting. Be quiet, little devils. I don't know if it was intentional or fate, but Makarov's slap happened to hit Natsu, the most noisy person in Fairy Tail. Seeing Makarov stop it, everyone in the guild stopped fighting immediately. Old man, why did you stop me? I was so close to beating that be asterisk D gray. What did you say? You think you can beat me? Do you want to be beaten? Seeing the two people arguing and even about to fight again, the women of Demon Slayer world couldn't help but hide behind Yimeng. Shinobu Kocho didn't even hide her disgusted look and asked, Yimeng, how come there are perverts in your Fairy Tail guild? Maybe they didn't notice it before because they were in the middle of the fight, but now that everyone is quieted down and they're making so much noise, Shinobu Kocho and the others finally noticed the presence of Gray, the pervert. Yimeng also said with a bit of a smile, you'll get used to it. In other words, Gray is at least still wearing a pair of shorts. Otherwise, Yimeng would have blown the guy away before this guy polluted the eyes of his girls. I had this stereotype of Gray before, and I hadn't seen him last time at Fairy Tail. I guess he was out on mission, so I didn't realize it. But now, well, it's decided. From now on, if this guy dares to take off a pair of pants in front of his woman, he will be kicked out. Makarov also introduced to everyone that there were new people joining Fairy Tail. Everyone was very surprised to learn that Fairy Tail had a new member joining. Of course, it's not that no one has joined for a long time, but it's been a long time since we saw such young children joining Fairy Tail. You know, in the past, several main members of Fairy Tail broke away and independently formed a new wizard guild, causing the guild to be in a slump for a long time. At the same time, since Natsu and his friends were only 11 or 12 years old at the time, Fairy Tail was even nicknamed Fairy Tail Kindergarten by the outside world, and it was a guild dedicated to taking care of children. But it turns out that these children have great potential. And because they grew up in the guild and are very loyal to it, there is basically no possibility of them being poached by other guilds. So now many guilds want to follow Fairy Tail's example and recruit children to join. However, it turns out that this kind of thing depends a lot on luck. After all, the child is too young to even judge his potential and qualifications, and it is difficult to determine whether he is worth training. Although most humans in this world have magic power in their bodies, to become a wizard, one must not only have sufficient magic power in their body, but also be able to use magic. So not everyone can become a magician. The people Yi Ming brought back this time were even more outrageous. Although they all looked to be around 16 years old, with one adult woman in her early 30s, none of them had any magic power in their bodies. This is different from ordinary people. No, it should be said that it is even worse than ordinary people. In this world where all creatures have magic powers, it is not an exaggeration to say that people without magic powers are disabled. Not to mention the three youngest ones, who look no younger than when Natsu and the others first joined. In this world, even a single person without magic power in their body can be considered a rarity. Now that 10 of them appeared at once, how could they not be surprised? I know you all doubt the strength of these children. So do I. There's nothing I can do about it, because this is a world where magic is supreme. Strength is directly correlated with magical power. What's more, at least 80% of all guild commissions require strong support. Your situation is special. You have no magic power in your body, so it is difficult for me to judge your strength. Therefore, if you wish to officially join Fairy Tail, you must first prove your abilities to me, and whether you can safely carry out these commission missions and return safely. Yi Ming said that your strength is around B-class magicians. How about I arrange for a B-class magician to fight you? I don't ask you to win completely, as long as you can hold out against them for more than 10 minutes. After hearing Makarov's words, Shinobu Kocho and the others suddenly felt that they were being underestimated. However, after understanding how people in this world judge strength, Shinobu Kocho could only endure it for a while. Yi Ming looked at Makarov in surprise. Makarov also noticed Yi Ming's surprised expression and smiled with an expression that said, "I'm giving you a lot of face, right?" Seeing Makarov like that, Yi Ming immediately knew what was going on. Yi Ming's previous statement that Kocho, Shinobu, and the others had the strength of B-class wizards refers to their strength when they used only their own breathing techniques and swordsmanship without using the cheats he gave them. Although magicians use the power of magic, in fact, before reaching level A, their combat effectiveness can be caught up with or even surpassed by pure physical strength. This was actually mentioned when Natsu and Lucy teamed up to do a commission mission to steal a book. Unfortunately, Natsu was a rare magician who could cultivate both magic and spirits. In addition, the actual combat power of Fairy Tail's people could not be judged by conventional levels, so Natsu easily killed the two physical mercenaries in seconds. Although the Demon Slayer Corps in Demon Slayer World are ordinary people without extraordinary powers, their actual combat abilities are generally strong because they've been fighting demons for many years. After all, any small mistake could turn you into a cannibal's dinner. Therefore, if we only talk about combat power, Shinobu Kocho and the others are actually not weaker than B-class wizards. And if you add the powerful strength given by Yi Ming, then they will at least start as A-level magicians. How strong are the A-class wizards in the Fairy Tail world? People like Mikao and Elfman are standard A-level wizards, and their strength standard in Yi Ming is almost at the explosive level, which is close to the level of Muzan. The power that Shinobu Kocho and the others obtained from Yi Ming also allowed them to reach almost this level of strength. Yi Ming was also speechless and said, "My ability to express myself is indeed a bit problematic. I am saying that they possess the strength of a B-class wizard simply by using swordsmanship. In addition to swordsmanship, they also have other extraordinary powers that are different from the magic system. Their overall strength is actually at the level of an A-class wizard. Also, the targets they fought before have always been ghosts with at least B-rank strength and above. They've rarely fought humans, so every move they make is deadly and aimed directly at Tang. Because they all fought on the brink of life and death, their combat experience is definitely CDFG at the level of A-class wizards. ST, are these girls so ruthless? It seems like you shouldn't be joining the Wizards Guild, but rather the Assassins Guild. After all, this kind of guild is the only one that focuses on hunting targets. Regular light guilds like Fairy Tail, apart from defeating monsters, basically do not kill when facing enemies, unless they encounter those desperate criminals from the Dark Guilds. So if you want to test their true combat power, it would be better to use an A-class wizard. After hearing what Yi Meng said, Makarov realized that he had misjudged the experience of these newcomers. But this is normal. Even though Makarov is not the type to look down on anyone easily, he is used to judging a person's strength by magic power. Therefore, he subconsciously ignores the fact that the aura of Shinobu Kocho and others is not much worse than that of the A-level magicians in the guild. Of course, the most important thing is that he didn't expect that there is a power system other than magic. But when I thought about the fact that Yi Meng just mentioned that these people were brought back from other worlds, I felt relieved. After all, it is a different world, so it is normal to have some differences. Pelusica in the guild is a typical example of this. But this actually made things a bit troublesome. The reason is very simple, because the people brought back by Yi Meng are all girls. It's not that there are no A-level wizards in the guild, there are actually quite a few. This is one of the main reasons why Fairy Tail can become the #1 guild, because they have enough high-end combat power. However, there are very few women who can become A-class wizards. Even Fairy Tail is no exception. He couldn't let a bunch of stinky men fight these girls, could he? Anyone with a discerning eye can see that these girls have a special relationship with Yi Meng. Although he despised, envied Yi Meng's behavior of having multiple girlfriends, it was someone else's private matter, and he couldn't say much. Not to mention, the girls themselves had no objections, so what could he, an outsider, say? Therefore, since he had already tacitly acknowledged the relationship between these girls and Yi Meng, he naturally could not let those brats and his family take advantage of them. Even if it doesn't matter, he won't do this. He still has this bottom line. After all, he just likes looking at beautiful women, which is good for his physical and mental health, and he is not a hooligan without bottom line. But it was precisely because of this that he felt a headache. Afterwards, Makarov glanced around the guild and found that there were still 2 girls with the strength of A-level wizards who had not gone out to do missions, which made him feel a little relieved. Although there are only 3 in the Union, it is enough. After all, according to his observation, there seemed to be only 5 people over there who had strong combat capabilities. The remaining few should be simply medical personnel. Well, Kana, Biska, and Lei. No, it's you, Loki, who should be the ones to test the abilities of these newcomers. When Levy heard that Makarov suddenly changed his mind and replaced him, his eyes became a little resentful. Although her overall strength, or the overall level as a guild magician, has reached the standard A-level magician. However, from the fact that she has had to form a team to complete A-level commission tasks so far, it can be seen that her personal combat power is still relatively weak. And her position in her team is indeed more inclined towards auxiliary and support. Just to put things in perspective, either don't call me, or just let me go ahead and do it. You suddenly changed people halfway through your call in front of so many people. Isn't it obvious that you're looking down on your weak ability? Don't I want to save face? Makarov naturally noticed Levy's resentful look. It was only for Levy's safety that he had to change people midway. Although Loki is a B-class wizard in the overall evaluation, he is very good at combat and control. It can be said that we have a great advantage in dealing with these killer-type guys. Yi Meng, on the other hand, looked at the 3 people who were sent out, thought for a moment, and then said, Li, Zhang Naping, and before Yi Meng could finish her words, Shinobu Kocho stepped forward and said, "Let me be the last one. I really like to see what this so-called magic is like." Yi Meng shrugged when he heard this. Although there are 10 people on their side, only 5 of them are capable of participating in combat missions. Apart from Mitsuri Kanroji and Kaneo Kocho, who have already been selected, the only ones left are the Butterfly Sisters and Nezuko. Although Nezuko has now completely integrated the power of demon blood and turned into a demon human, and possesses strength that is even enough to rival the S-class wizards in this world, she has just obtained this power and does not know how to fight. After obtaining the S-level Wandering Warrior template given by Yi Meng, Kocho Kane, coupled with the running in and monster-killing upgrades over the past 2 years, now also has the strength of a block level. And in this world, It is the strength of the peak dollar level. It would be more appropriate to let Urza or Mira Jane fight against Kocho Kane. Therefore, the only one who can choose in the end is Shinobu Kocho. Then, the showdown began. At the same time, Meng Meng also provided the technological product of Debrick Star, the virtual battlefield. This thing is a training ground built by Debluck for the military. Here, the human body will be virtualized into data so that everyone can fight with all their strength without worrying about killing the opponent. It is used when there is a grudge or when ranking personal combat power. Therefore, everyone at Fairy Tail was very surprised and excited when they learned about this magical thing. After all, internal wars often broke out within Fairy Tail, but because they treated each other as family, he was more restrained when fighting and would only exert less than 50% of his strength at most, for fear of accidentally injuring the other party and thus damaging the relationship between them. But now, with this virtual battlefield, they can fight with other members of the guild without restraint. When Yimeng saw what Meng Meng took out, he was surprised but not surprised. After all, Deviluk was a powerful planet that dominated the Milky Way, so it was normal that it had powerful technology, not to mention that there was Lala, a genius inventor who was also unreasonable. I always feel like this thing will easily affect the balance of the guild's atmosphere. Requesting flowers. Meng Meng heard this and asked worriedly, shouldn't this thing be taken out? The reason she took this thing out was because she saw everyone in the guild always fighting, so in order to avoid any bad accidents, she took this thing out. And in this way, everyone can fight with all their strength without worrying about accidentally killing their own people. Makarov, who knew what Yimeng was worried about, stepped forward and said comfortingly, "It's okay. This thing is indeed quite suitable for our fairy tale. But personally, I think it's better to take it out only when a duel is needed, and it's fine to just keep it like this at other times." After all, they had at least exercised some restraint in the past, fearing that they would tear down the guild that they considered their home. But now that we have this opportunity, we no longer need to show mercy when we take action, but at the same time, it is also easier to achieve real destruction. However, given the atmosphere within the Fairy Tail Guild, the likelihood of this happening is still relatively low. But it is better to be safe than sorry, so it is better to take this thing out less often and only take it out when necessary. Meng Meng naturally had no opinion on this. Then, Makarov suddenly thought of something and became serious, then said a little embarrassedly, "Oh, Meng Meng, this virtual thing, can it be used on objects?" Although Makarov felt that it would be better to use this thing less in order to avoid people in the guild from getting really angry. But if possible, Makarov would like to virtualize the tables and chairs in the guild. This way, he wouldn't have to feel so bad when these kids were fighting. Loki's magic is with shaping magic, so the broken tables and chairs in the guild are usually repaired and made by Loki. Although you still need to pay, at least there are no middlemen making a profit from the price difference. However, if we can directly virtualize all of this furniture, then we can even save the money on repairing the furniture. Although doing so might be a bit unfair to Loki, everyone in the guild likes to cause trouble when doing tasks, especially Natsu, who often causes damage that requires him to pay out of his own pocket to help subsidize the spoon-level damage. So he also wanted to save this expense. Meng Meng heard this and said with a wry smile, "If you want to ask this question, you should consult my sister Lala. Many of these technological products were invented by Sister Lala. She should be able to invent what you need." 140, Makarov said happily after hearing this. "Really? That's great. Then when Lala comes back, I will go to her in person to see if I can make this thing out." After saying that, Makarov couldn't help but look forward to it. However, Yimeng said, "However, I suggest you don't expect too much." Makarov was stunned when he heard this, and asked in confusion, "What's wrong?" Yimeng said helplessly, "According to my understanding of Lala's abilities, although she can easily invent what you need, many times when she invents something, Lala will suddenly come up with some weird ideas and add some strange things, or suddenly come up with some weird ideas and invent some strange things. And things like this, created on a whim, can easily go haywire or explode." Meng Meng also said helplessly, "Well, Na and I are frequent victims of Sister Shure's inventions." Nana and I's current ability to survive and fight is actually largely due to sister Lala's various rampage inventions. And each failed product has a very large explosion radius. With its power, it should be able to blow up an entire guild. I wouldn't be surprised even if it blew up the entire Magnolia. Makarov, Makarov also suddenly felt that it would be a good idea to let Laki continue to be responsible for maintaining the furniture in the guild. After all, we can't just let the girls in the guild lose a source of income for no reason, right? If these brats fight, at most they can destroy some tables and chairs, but if Lala's invention goes berserk or explodes, the entire guild might be the first to be destroyed. The choice is clear. Soon, the showdown is finally about to begin. Kanroji Mitsuri versus Kana. Kaneo Kirihana versus Biska. Shinobu Kocho versus Laki. Yimeng did not deliberately choose a restrained matchup that would allow them to secure a victory over their opponent. Firstly, we will all be one family guild in the future, so there is no need to determine a winner. As long as we can show enough strength and gain everyone's recognition, that will be enough. Secondly, everyone will be a family, harem, in the future, so there is no need to determine the winner. It is enough to show enough strength so that both sides can recognize each other's strength. However, Yimeng still underestimated the abilities and props he had given them, or rather, the things produced by the system. Although Yimeng wanted to give the good things to his wife Lala first, so he didn't give them the EX level ghost power, high-speed regeneration, and immortality that were upgraded to them. Even so, just relying on the abilities and props that Yimeng had given them before, their strength has been greatly improved. Even S-level wizards can fight them. Mitsuri Kanroji directly used the retractable ribbon to summon the demonic serpent sword, which greatly enhanced the power of the serpent sword. Kana's achievements could hardly cause any damage to Mitsuri Kanroji, who was both offensive and defensive. Even if Kana wanted to engage in a tug-of-war with Mitsuri Kanroji, the length of the snake-belly sword was quite outrageous. When it was fully exerted, it could reach a length of 100 meters. But if it's too long, it will be difficult for Kanroji Mitsuri herself to control it. Secondly, there is the bomb ball, which is simply a bomb. With Mitsuri Kanroji's muscles 8 times denser than those of an ordinary person, it is quite easy for her to hit the target. Then there was Kaneo Kurika. At Kane Kocho's request, Yimeng also transferred the S-level flower-breathing sword skill to Kaneo Kurika. After the flower-breathing sword skill is upgraded to S-level, it can actively swing out petal-shaped sword energy to attack the enemy. If used properly, it can even be used to resist attacks. Secondly, compared to the breathing sword techniques of other schools, flower breathing is best at continuous high-speed strikes, thus creating the effect of suppressing the enemy head-on. Moreover, Kaneo Kirihana has a special ability, which is her strong insight. It was precisely because of this that, relying on this ability to avoid vital points, Kaneo Kurika was able to survive in such a family to the end and was rescued by the Butterfly Sisters. In addition, the ghost power bestowed by Yimeng strengthened Kaneo's basic values in all aspects, which also allowed Kaneo to almost directly suppress Biska's shooting ability of hitting the enemy 100%. Kaneo Amaraki's understanding is that since she can't dodge Biska's long-range shooting, she is also 2.7, so she simply doesn't dodge and directly faces the attack head-on. Then everyone saw Kaneo Kurikara walking towards Biska nonchalantly while shooting away the bullet that had flown in front of her. Of course, the reason she was able to achieve this level of skill was because Kaneo Awakaroku used the final form of flower breathing, the red eyes of the other shore. By concentrating all your energy and applying pressure to your eyeballs, you push your dynamic vision to the limit, making everything around you appear slow. Although this move carries the risk of blindness, don't forget that this is a virtual battlefield, a place where even death doesn't exist, so Kaneo can use this ability without regard for the consequences. In this way, even if Biska's long-range shooting can achieve a 100% hit rate, Kaneo Suhua can easily shoot away the bullets. Finally, it was Shinobu Kocho versus Laki and she was completely defeated in 1 second. Before Yi Ming left last time, he taught Kocho Shinobu an extra move as compensation. And the name of this skill is Shave. This is one of the few anime moves that has a clear way to use it, and it is also a move that Shinobu Kocho can learn and use. The principle of using a razor is to stomp on the ground at high speed dozens of times in an instant to generate an explosive reaction force to move at high speed, thus achieving an effect similar to teleportation. And it just so happened that the insect breathing created by Shinobu Kocho contained a move that was very compatible with the way Shave used it: centipede dance, centipede belly. The principle of this move is to stomp the ground with enough force to lift it up, then move in all directions, disrupting the opponent, and then taking the opportunity to attack with a knife. After 2 years of training, Shinobu Kocho has successfully mastered Shave and Moon Step, and is now beginning to study how to use what Yi Ming called Arashikaji. The powerful mobility also allowed the battle to be completed in an instant. Not only does she have the speed of teleportation, but she can also run around in the air without being affected by any terrain. Loki can't catch her even if he wants to, but Shinobu Kocho can suddenly appear behind Loki like a ghost, scaring people half to death. In this way, the 3 women from Demon Slayer World easily defeated their opponents. Watching the duel that ended in almost no time, Makarov couldn't help but twitch his lips. He asked Yi Ming speechlessly, "Didn't you say that he was only around B rank, or at most A rank? Based on the strength they've demonstrated, they're already S rank, right?" Loki could almost be said to be the only one among the 3 who could still have an explanation for his loss. After all, among the 3 people on the field, Loki was the only one with B-level strength. Moreover, with Shinobu Kocho's speed, not to mention the restrained enemy, even among all the members of the Fairy Tail Guild present, few could catch her. But the other 2 are really outrageous. They are completely crushed. It seems that Mitsuri Kenroji, who seems to be the strongest, is fine, because after all, it can be said that the things given by Yi Ming are stronger than Kana's cards. Under the premise that both parties are users with ability, in addition to their own strength, the quality of the items they hold will naturally be the factor of competition. But Kaneo Kirihana was a bit exaggerated. Although it looked like there were no special effects, and she was just chopping with a knife, her attitude showed that she didn't take Biska seriously at all. Biska's mentality was almost broken. Of course, he personally felt that the main reason why they were beaten so badly was because Yi Ming had misled them, making them think that these girls could only exert the strength of an A-level magician at best. Yi Ming was also a little surprised and scratched his head and said, "Isn't this for an A-class wizard?" After hearing Yi Ming's words, Makarov immediately knew where the problem lay. Although he was a little surprised, Yi Ming didn't seem to know how strong an A-level magician was. Or, in other words, Yi Ming didn't know how to judge a person's strength. In other words, Yi Ming's judgment of strength is different from theirs. After all, Yi Ming also said that he was a time traveler from another world and could even travel to other worlds at will. Therefore, he had his own set of judgments on strength, but it just happened to be somewhat incompatible with their world. So this led Yi Ming to misjudge the strength of the A-level magicians in their world. And in fact, this is indeed the case. As Yi Ming comes from a world without supernatural powers, his judgment of strength is based on destructive power, that is, those explosive level, regional level, and explosive star level. In Yi Ming's understanding, the strongest being in the fairy tale world is the black dragon Acnologia. The black dragon's destructive power level is continental, and the next level is Holy Shield, Holy 10, S level, a level, and at A level, it is building destroying level, which is the same level of strength as Musen Kibutsuji he would lose in the original work, purely due to the infinite weakening caused by various debuffs. Therefore, in Yi Ming's opinion, the women whose current strength is similar to that of Musen Kibutsuji should be at the Bakugo level. In the fairy tale world, they should be the A-level wizard Shungbu's waterbending. However, Yi Ming forgot one thing. The class differentiation in fairy tale is actually God, Demigod, Dragon King, Dragon, Saint, Heavenly King, Saint 10, SA. The Black Dragon is a demigod-level existence. So if we really judge its strength based on Yi Meng's destructive power, the position of the A-level magician may be the weakest single level. It's almost a matter of misconception. Secondly, the improvement that Yi Meng brought to their 093 capabilities was not a small one. After figuring out where the problem occurred, everyone was speechless. I didn't expect that although Yi Meng is handsome, rich, and strong, he is surprisingly natural. No wonder you were able to get together with Lala so quickly. It seems you two are the same kind of people. Yi Meng scratched his head a little embarrassedly when he heard this. To put it nicely, it's natural. To put it bluntly, it's stupid. But Yi Meng does have this kind of personality. He never thinks too much about anything he does and basically does whatever he thinks of. It is often easy to read and reply randomly, so it is easy to have problems with details. Makarov was also a little speechless, but Yi Meng really didn't mean it, so he didn't say much. Anyway, the problem is your fault, so you have to compensate them properly. Yi Meng also smiled a little embarrassedly and said, "Well, I admit my mistakes and I will do my best to compensate them." Afterwards, Yi Meng walked to the three women with a bit of embarrassment and said, "Well, I'm sorry because of me." Kana was also speechless and said, "How dare you say that? I really thought they were newcomers and had no serious intentions at all. They almost broke my mentality." Biska said with a look of resentment on his face, "I have been completely broken." Laki also smiled bitterly and said, "I'm okay, my strength in the guild is not that strong. I was just making up the numbers. Levy, I don't even qualify to make up the numbers." But at the same time, Bai was somewhat relieved that he was not selected. Otherwise, she would probably be as mentally broken as Biska. Yi Meng scratched his head a little embarrassedly when he heard this. Afterwards, Yi Meng thought about it and said, "I don't have anything suitable for you as compensation at the moment. How about this? I help you improve your strength." Kana was also a little moved when she heard this and asked, "Can you also teach people?" At the same time, Kana couldn't help but ponder for a moment. She had just discussed this with Mitsuri Kanroji, and they knew that their strengths were basically given by Yi Meng, so Ka was not too convinced when Yi Meng said that he could help them improve their strengths. It's just not clear whether Yi Meng gave them the power directly or whether they developed the strength through Yi Meng's teaching. But now it seems that Yi Meng is also good at guiding people to improve their strength. And most importantly, she really needs to improve her strength now. She had been selected for the S-rank promotion assessment twice in a row, but both times ended in failure. The first time she faced Urza, and the second time she faced Mira Jane, both of whom were undoubtedly top talents. P.S. In the original book, he failed a total of 4 times. On the 5th time, he decided to quit the guild if he failed again. She wanted to become an S-class wizard because she felt that only by advancing to S-class would she be qualified to recognize her father, Gir Das, who was known as the strongest wizard with the tail of a sister spirit. I originally thought that after those 2 outrageous women became S-rank, no one would be able to snatch my place away. But just half a year ago, another Mystigan appeared with equally monstrous talent, and a few days ago, Yi Meng and others also joined. According to her investigation and Mira Jane's own admission, people like Yi Meng and Lala are no more capable than them. Now Yi Meng has brought back a few women who started at S level, which makes Kana a little upset. Fortunately, Lala had just joined the guild, and they would most likely not be qualified for the S-level promotion test next month, mainly because their scores were not high enough. So her biggest competitor in this S-level promotion test should be Mystigan. But she always felt that Mystigan's strength seemed to be no weaker than Mira Jane and Urza, and even stronger. After all, he held several national-level and top-level magic devices. Therefore, she was not very confident that she could become an S-class magician. After all, there were too many perverts. The addition of Yi Meng and others greatly increased the difficulty of her advancement. She even doubted whether she could advance in her lifetime. So, now when she heard Yi Meng say that he could help her improve her strength, she was naturally very excited. However, although Yi Meng said it was compensation, she also knew that if she could really successfully advance to an S-class wizard, then she would actually owe Yi Ming a favor in return, because given her personality, once she really succeeded, she would most likely want to repay the other party. And according to her current understanding of Yi Ming, it seems that there's only one best way to repay him. Forget it. Now that it's like this might even be her best chance of ever becoming an S-class wizard. Anyway, although Yi Ming is a playboy, he is excellent in all other aspects. Moreover, he dares to accept so many women, which means that Yi Ming must be very strong as a man. No matter how you think about him, it's different. Thinking of this, Kana also made up her mind. All right, the S-class promotion exam is next month. Before then, you can help me with some training. This might be my last chance to become an S-class wizard. The others were also very surprised to hear that Kana believed so easily that Yi Ming could help her improve her strength. However, after hearing Kana say that next month would be her last chance to be promoted to S-class magician, they all understood why Kana agreed so easily. It's just because the people Yi Ming brought back are all very powerful. Almost all of them star at S level. Therefore, unless they do not participate in the S-level promotion assessment, otherwise, Fairy Tail's S-level promotion assessment will become very difficult in the future. You know, in this world, an A-level wizard can be considered a guild's high-end combat force, and a city-level wizard can be called the guild's facade and signboard. Even whether a guild is considered a top-tier guild or a third-rate guild depends on whether there are S-class mages in your guild. The existence of an S-level wizard not only determines whether the guild is eligible to accept S-level tasks, but also allows it to obtain more guild commissions. As for 10-year missions, or even 100-year missions, a guild needs to have at least several S-class wizards. According to the information currently known, Fairy Tail is the guild with the most S-class mages in the entire Ishgard continent, while other top guilds basically only have 1 or 2 tons. And the Phantom Lord, who claim to be the strongest guild on the Ishgard continent alongside their Fairy Tail, plus their president Jose. There are only 2 of them. The others had not grown up yet. This shows how important and rare S-class wizards are to the continent of Ishgard. The reason why there are not many Fairy Tail S-level members is simply because the difficulty of promotion is far beyond the S-level promotion assessment of ordinary guilds. The reason why there are not many S-level members in other guilds is simply because they are too weak. Therefore, the goal of most guild wizards is to become an S-class wizard. Kana has been selected for 2 consecutive years, which means that Kana is qualified to become an S-class wizard in terms of both grades and strength. However, every time she takes the S-class promotion test, she encounters a person with abnormal strength. With the addition of Yi Ming and others, and considering the upper limit of magic that Kana can use, this might really be her last chance to be promoted to an S-class magician in her lifetime. There's no way around it. Although holding magic can easily become powerful in the early stages and won't be too weak in the later stages, and its abilities are also very versatile, the upper limit is also easily limited by the items held. Therefore, it is highly likely that Kana's strength will be difficult to improve further. So now, they can understand why Kana agreed to let Yi Ming help her train without hesitation. Obviously, it was because the women Yi Ming brought back generally had S-level strength. Although they didn't know whether these women were powerful in themselves or given power by Yi Ming, Kana had no better choice. Moreover, they could also let Kana try it out. If even someone like Kana, whose upper limit is almost locked, can continue to improve his strength to a higher level, then perhaps they can also continue to improve their strength. Therefore, they finally stopped trying to dissuade Kana. Kana could naturally guess what these little sisters were thinking, but she didn't care because this also showed that they would not compete with her for this opportunity to be promoted to S-class magician. That's enough. Seeing that Kana was willing to accept his advice, Yi Ming smiled and said, "No problem. But before that, there may be another troublesome matter that needs to be dealt with first." As he spoke, Yi Ming couldn't help but look at Natsu, who was walking towards him aggressively for some unknown reason, or perhaps simply out of desire to start a fight. "Hey, I heard from the old man that you're the one who saved Lee Sana, right? You look pretty powerful. Let's have a fight." Looking at Naz, who finally shone on him, Yimeng smiled helplessly. Yimeng was not surprised that Natsu came over and wanted to fight with him. After all, Natsu was a person who liked fighting. You could even say that if no one has challenged you to a fight, then you should reflect on how weak you really are. Others don't even want to fight with you. After all, although Natsu is aggressive, he is not completely reckless. At least he will not bully the weak, and he will even take good care of others. The reason why Natsu didn't come over immediately was not because he suddenly became obedient, but because Makarov suppressed him, and then because someone else wanted a duel, Natsu temporarily calmed down a little. Now that everything was over, Natsu naturally could no longer endure it, and rushed over impatiently wanted to fight with Yimeng. Yimeng didn't refuse when he heard this, but agreed directly. Although Yimeng could roughly know the extent of his own strength because of the system panel, seeing the data was different from actually feeling it. Therefore, Yimeng can use Natsu to measure the approximate level of his own strength in this world. The only pity is that Natsu's strength fluctuates a bit, with the lowest level being A and the highest being Saint 10. Of course, now he can probably only reach S level at most, because Yimeng actually also wanted to know how strong he was in this world right now. The guild members who were just about to return to the guild to do their own things became excited again when they heard that Yimeng also planned to duel with Natsu. They like to watch the fun and see others fight, and after the bet just now, they all lost badly. The Fairy Tale Guild has two major hobbies: fighting and gambling. It's just that because the fights in the guild are all known to each other's strength, so basically only when newcomers join or when the strength of both sides is comparable will they fight. But it was obvious that Yimeng's previous misleading made them all think that Shinobu Kocho and the others were only at B level, which caused them to lose the bet, so everyone was very unhappy. And now, seeing that Yimeng accepted Natsu's challenge, they naturally became excited again. However, there are still many people who are not optimistic about Natsu. The betting is on. The betting is on. Newcomer Yimeng and Fairy Tale's rising star Natsu. Is this really necessary? We all know those girls were given by Yimeng. They're already so amazing. So isn't this newcomer even more amazing? It's hard to say. Maybe he's just good at teaching people. That's true. After all, they still know that disciples do not have to be inferior to their teachers. Have you forgotten that Lisana also said that this newcomer easily defeated Elsa from another world? Although they were not very clear about how strong Urza in the other world was. But just based on the name Urza, they subconsciously accepted the fact that Urza in another world was also very powerful. Therefore, they didn't know how powerful a being that could even defeat Urza was, but they could definitely kill Natsu easily. After all, the fact that Natsu's strength is inferior to Urza has become the fixed outcome of the Fairy Tale Guild. In that case, it seems there's really no need to continue gambling. Huh? Wait, what's that new guy doing? He's borrowing cards from Kana? Natsu also saw this scene and asked in confusion, "What are you doing?" Because Yimeng has already agreed to duel with him, Natsu is not so anxious now. But I still feel a little confused about Yimeng's actions. But, looking at the other party, why does it seem like he wants to borrow Kana's cards to fight him? Wait, are you planning to use Kana's card magic to fight me? Although he didn't know whether items holding magic could be lent to others, he knew that card magic couldn't possibly compete with his Dragon Slayer magic, considering the strength of the magic itself. Either Yimeng himself couldn't use magic and could only use the magic of other people's items, or Yimeng didn't take him seriously at all. When everyone heard Natsu's suspicion, they all looked incredulous. Actually, it doesn't matter what kind of magic I use. I mainly want to see the strengths and weaknesses of Kana's card magic. This will come in handy in my upcoming guidance. Of course, I'm not the kind of person who thinks highly of myself, so in addition to Kana's card magic, I also use my own magic, so I can barely be considered a second-rate fighter. Natsu tilted his head when he heard that, thought for a moment, and then nodded in agreement. Okay. Natsu didn't really care about Yimeng's statement that it was 2 against 1. No matter whether the opponent uses card magic or not, as long as you make sure that the opponent will use his original magic to fight him, that's enough. Yimeng also took a quick look at the magic cards Kana had. However, looking at the magic cards Kana held, Yimeng's expression became a little surprised and asked, "Is this all? Why are they all attack spells? Aren't there any other types of cards?" Kana was also stunned when she heard Yimeng's words. She said, "Huh? Are there other types of card magic?" Yimeng was speechless when he heard this. "You, a card player, actually have the nerve to ask me, are there other types of cards?" Seeing Yimeng's reaction, Kana was once again certain that, in Yimeng's knowledge, there really were other types of card magic. So, is this me being cheated, or is this me being ignorant? Afterwards, Yimeng directly opened the panel function and checked Kana's magic cards. Magic cards. Each card has a different magical effect. The magic of each card has the power of B-level magic, and when used together, it can reach the highest level of A. When used together, it has the effect of predicting the future. Yimeng also raised his eyebrows when he saw the detailed introduction of card magic. Not only are the card types limited, but the types of magic that can be used are also very few. Basically, there are conventional basic elemental attacks such as wind, water, thunder, fire, and earth. Furthermore, since this is item-type magic with a fixed upper limit, for those with strong magical powers, it will even in turn limit the user's upper limit of strength. Coincidentally, Kana, the daughter of Girdas, the strongest wizard in fairy tale and even a top-level wizard in the entire fairy tale world, is also a person who is born with powerful magic power. It's just that she didn't appear all at once like Laxus and Ursha. Therefore, card magic, an item-type magic with a fixed upper limit, is strictly speaking not very suitable for Kana. Moreover, card magic needs to be injected with mana in advance when used, which is the so-called cooling. The more mana you have, the faster the cooling will be. However, Yimeng already knew how to use card magic to fight. Afterwards, Yimeng also began to arrange these magic cards and place them in the air in front of him, making the cards in front of Yimeng look like an arranged desktop file. Attack, defense, containment, displacement. Although it looks a bit simple, each element in these element cards actually has its own function. When used alone, it has the power of a B-level spell at most, but by using several cards of the same element at once to strengthen the card of that element, it can reach the power of an A-level spell. "Okay, I'm ready. You can attack at any time." Hearing Yimeng's words, Natsu also grinned, bumped his fists together, and his emotions instantly became high. Requesting flowers. "Okay, then I'm going to go. Fire dragons." Having received permission to attack, Natsu didn't bother to be polite with Yimeng. He took a deep breath, his chest puffed out. Anyone who knew him knew at a glance that this guy was going to use his signature move, Fire Dragon's Roar. So naturally, Yimeng, who also knew very well what Natsu was going to do, directly clicked on several cards on the card table in front of him. The next second, Yimeng used a different method from Kana's spellcasting. He launched earthquakes, sinkholes, and spikes directly under Natsu's feet, trying to interrupt the opponent's spellcasting. The sudden shaking and denting of the ground beneath his feet forced Natsu, who was in horse stance and ready to spit fire, to give up casting the spell immediately. His intuition told him that Yimeng's attack was not limited to this. Thinking of this, Natsu quickly gathered his magic power and released it from his body. The powerful fire magic just collided directly with several ground spikes that suddenly sprang out from all around. The powerful fire magic directly offset the ground spike attack that could even reach A level with the assistance of the seismic technique. That was a close call. I was almost killed instantly. Amazing. I didn't expect Kana's card magic to cause Natsu to suffer such a huge loss in one go. Yeah, if it weren't for Natsu's sharp fighting instincts, he would have been killed instantly. Haha, if it were me, let alone blocking it, I might not even be able to react. Kana on the side was also a little surprised. She naturally knew that there was a magic called Earthquake in her magic card. But because the earthquake could only make the ground beneath her feet shake slightly, and that degree of shaking could only make people a little unsteady, it felt very useless, so she usually used it as a reinforcement material for other ground attribute magic. Unexpectedly, It can be used in this way. First, use Earthquake to interrupt the spell, making it unstable, and then take the opportunity to launch a ground spike attack. This is because Natsu's combat instincts are very sharp. Otherwise, this one strike would be enough for Yi Ming to kill him instantly. After all, this small combo is not only fast to launch, but also precise enough to make you lose your balance. Most people will most likely be hit if they encounter this situation. Before Natsu could make the next move to counterattack, Yi Ming's attack came towards him again. He saw that several magic arrows surrounded by various elements had surrounded him from all directions and attacked towards the direction where Naz was. Seeing this scene, 740 Natsu was also shocked. Relying on his strong combat instinct, Natsu wrapped his hands and feet with flames, and then quickly spun and danced, while spitting out flames from his mouth, trying to form a rotating flame shield. Yi Ming seemed to have guessed that Natsu would do this. The magic arrow in his hand, which had been condensed at some point, was aimed at Natsu again. Ice and fire merge, rock bears the weight, wind and thunder pave the way. Everyone could clearly feel that the magic arrow condensed in Yi Ming's hand definitely contained magic power comparable to S level. Although Natsu had successfully blocked the encirclement attack, he also knew that the arrows just looked intimidating and had no real power. And now, the magic arrow condensed by Yi Ming is a real trick. But who is he? He's Natsu. He's never the type to admit defeat. Stop talking nonsense. Come on, if you want to. I'll shoot you away before your arrow hits me. Yi Ming raised his eyebrows upon hearing this and said, "Is it possible that I can decide when to detonate this magic arrow? For example, if you get close to my arrow, it will explode immediately." Natsu. Everyone, if this is the case, then Yi Ming's attack cannot be considered a ballistic attack but a range bombing. However, Natsu still grinned and said, "Then we'll die together." Also, let me tell you, explosions are also considered a type of fire. After that, Natsu also exerted force with his feet. The flames condensed directly under his feet and then erupted instantly, making Natsu rush towards Yi Ming like a rocket. When everyone heard this, they immediately understood why Natsu dared to die together with Yi Ming. Because for Natsu, anything that is fire is his food. Not only can it not cause him any harm, but it will also replenish his energy. Of course, Yi Ming's magic arrow is not a simple fire arrow, but a mixture of various elements. It can be said that as long as Natsu dares to eat it, the magic power in his body will run wild in front of him. So Natsu was just trying to scare Yi Ming and make him hesitate. But unfortunately, Natsu also underestimated Yi Ming's madness. Just as Natsu was about to dash in front of Yi Ming also instantly fired a magic arrow at his feet and detonated it. Boom! A huge mushroom cloud rose high above the town of Magnolia. Almost everyone in the town saw the huge mushroom cloud and heard the roar that could be heard even at the edge of the town. The huge explosion even blew away the other people who were watching the show and were not very strong. Shinobu Kocho, whose weight was even lighter than that of a 10-year-old girl, was almost about to turn into a butterfly and fly away. Fortunately, Yi Ming had already built a magic barrier for them before taking action to help block the shockwave. After Makinov came back to his senses from the roar of the explosion, he was also anxious and angry. Putting aside the devastation this move would cause to the surrounding area, could such an international move be used casually against one's own people? Natsu took this attack head-on, and they were probably going to be in trouble. Soon the smoke dissipated. Only two spherical shadows appeared inside. One was Yi Ming, and the other was Na. Seeing this, Makarov couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. But he still roared at Yi Ming because he was just frightened. UB*****************. D. Are you trying to blow Magnolia up into the sky? Yi Ming, whose ears were a little uncomfortable from the vibration, smiled helplessly and said, "Don't worry. I'm not the kind of person who likes to cause trouble. I had already sealed off the surrounding space before I took action." I have to mention this. Taishu Sword Energy is really awesome. The A-level Taishu Sword Energy already has the effect of being able to attack and hit the target within the lock space range. After reaching the EX level, Yi Ming can even block space through Taishu Sword Chi or Taishu Grip. Upon hearing this, Makarov suddenly noticed that the attack that Yi Ming had previously launched was actually limited to a certain range. Aside from the strong wind, which nearly blew him away like a typhoon, the blast hadn't affected anything else. 5.4 glanced at Natsu, who was floating in a protective shield, seemingly motion sickness caused by being a vehicle, not by the blast, and Makarov couldn't help but sigh once more at Yi Ming's experience. He originally thought that he had learned about Yi Ming's general strength from Lee Sana before, but he didn't expect that this was just the tip of the iceberg of Yi Ming. And he didn't forget that Yi Ming was using Kana's card magic to fight Natsu this time. In other words, Yi Ming's true strength is probably still at the moment of this explosion. Is this Kana's magic, or is it mixed with yours? Yi Ming smiled and said, "Of course I added my own magic. Otherwise, do you think car magic can really exert this level of power so easily? My magic can allow even mutually restraining elements to be perfectly integrated. Once these conflicting elements are integrated and detonated, how powerful will they be? As the grandfather of Saint Ten, you should be able to guess, right?" After hearing Yi Ming's explanation, Makarov finally understood why Yi Ming's attack was so powerful. Although he was not the one who taught Kana card magic, he knew roughly how powerful card magic was. Moreover, the advantage of card magic has never been simple destruction, but rather a universal magic that can be used in any situation. It can even allow people with special talents to have the ability to predict the future. As a price, the destructive power of card magic is naturally not as good as ordinary attack magic. In fact, only those who are fully proficient in using card magic can perform A-level magic, let alone reach S-level. So, what you're saying is that if I want to become a true S-class fighter, I need to learn the magic that can fuse different elements from you. After understanding the general situation, Ina couldn't help but put forward his own guess. Yi Ming also shook his head and said, "No, my situation is already considered a natural ability, not suitable for teaching others. Besides, fusion is one of the basic methods of using card magic. When you were fighting Mitsuri, didn't you also use fusion to increase the power and effect of a certain magic card? It's actually the same thing, except that I can blend the two different elements perfectly without any worries. As for you, you can practice more and find your feel for it, and eventually you will succeed. Then there's your method of casting spells. My understanding of card magic is summoning, but you're just throwing the cards out like bombs. If it's just for attacking, this method of use is indeed fine, and it can even improve your hit rate to a certain extent. However, it's not suitable for all-rounders, and it's also easy to be intercepted or even have your card stolen. Also, I don't quite understand. Who taught you to use card magic like this? Isn't that too crude? You're just throwing card magic like a bomb." Upon hearing this, everyone couldn't help but look at the two old men in the guild. Kana joined Fairy Tail at a very young age, and it was these two who brought her up, so if we were to ask who taught Kana magic combat, it would undoubtedly be these two. Macau/Wakaba, ##. Kana. In fact, after seeing Yi Ming use her card magic to fight, or after experiencing 2 S-level promotion assessments, she had already realized that there might be something wrong with the way she used card magic. But because she couldn't think of any other way to use it, she kept it unchanged for the time being. Yi Ming, by the way, why do you want to learn card magic? In order to avoid making the atmosphere too awkward, Yi Ming chose to change the subject. Hearing Yi Ming's words, Kana was stunned for a moment, then smiled helplessly and said, "Although I have powerful magic power, I haven't awakened magic, so I can only learn it on my own. Plus, I have a good talent for divination, so they suggested that I learn card magic. I think it's great, so I decided to go the card magic route. This way, I can save myself the time of systematically learning traditional magic. What's more, magic also requires adaptability. If it's not suitable, then learning it will be ineffective and meaningless." Yimeng nodded and said, "Well, that's true. Since you like card magic, then continue to study it. Cards also have great potential. I heard someone say that the upper limit of magic depends on the upper limit of a person's imagination. As long as the imagination is unlimited, then the person's magical potential is unlimited." Makarov, who was drinking and listening to how Yimeng taught Kana, nodded when he heard this. This sentence was almost the same as what he usually said to the kids in the guild, but Yimeng's was more concise and clear. But he was very curious. Is the upper limit of card magic really that high? Although card magic is not unpopular, it is not very strong either. In other words, wizards who use card magic are generally not very strong, and A level is almost their limit. So he was very curious. How powerful would S-level card magic be? Yimeng also continued, "Although I am not very good at teaching, I have enough experience, so I can still provide you with a lot of advice and inspiration." Kana and the others couldn't help but be stunned when they heard that Yimeng was not very good at teaching. If you can't teach people, how can you guide them to improve their strength? You have a lot of experience. That's okay. Because Yimeng didn't think that being able to travel to other worlds was a secret that couldn't be told. After all, there were travelers in this world as well. So he didn't mean to hide it deliberately, and of course he didn't take the initiative to expose it, because some guys would target him because of it. However, because of this reason, when Lala heard someone ask her where she came from, she told some of her background. So basically everyone in Fairy Tale knew that Yimeng and others were visitors from another world. As Yimeng can travel through various worlds, it is natural for him to have a lot of knowledge. Maybe Yimeng has been to a world dominated by cards. For a moment, everyone began to have high expectations for high-level card magic. Well, let me first talk about the card magic I performed. First, you're using the external system now. Directly release the magic that you've imprinted in advance. Then there are trap cards. These are similar to the Earthfall, Earthquake, and Bind I've used before. You can either use them directly or place them somewhere and wait for someone to step on them and fall into the trap. Anything that can restrict or interfere with the actions of others can be considered a trap card. After hearing this, Kana finally understood why Yimeng had rearranged the cards before starting. Finally, there's the summoning system I mentioned. The difference isn't that big, except that one summons magic to attack the enemy, while the other summons creatures and monsters. This is actually similar to your Celestial Spirit Wizards. You could try to create some monster cards. They don't have to be super powerful, but at least they can act as a tank or provide support. In short, just make sure you're not easily defeated and can create opportunities for you to defeat the enemy. The cards are meant to be all around. If you feel you're still lacking something in battle, just create new cards to fill in the gaps. You can either go for quality, quantity, or both. You have enough magic power anyway, so even if you go the route of a one-man army, it won't be a problem. Kana couldn't help but feel moved when she heard this. Yes, since my own strength is not enough, why not just combine our strengths? Why do you have to do it alone? And most importantly, as the daughter of Girdas, she inherited the magical talent of Girdas, the strongest fairy tale wizard, and was able to handle temple affairs and a number of people at the same time. She has now learned how to make cards, so she can do it herself. The only problem is that monster cards are a bit troublesome, as you definitely need to collect monster materials before you can make them. Later, Yimeng also said, "The last step is transformation." Everyone was shocked when they heard this. Besides, even though Yimeng had just mentioned the existence of monster cards, which they had never heard of, they all knew that if Kana could create monster cards that were comparable to the Zodiac, then her becoming an S-class wizard would basically be a foregone conclusion. Unexpectedly, there is more. Yimeng ignored the shocked expressions on everyone's faces and continued. This transformation card can actually be considered an upgraded version of the release type. If imprinting preset spells onto cards, and allowing the user to activate them to unleash the spells, is the first stage, then is it possible to imprint human data onto cards? For example, if I engrave Natsu's data on a card, can I then gain dragon-slaying magic that can use Natsu's magic? Everyone was stunned when they heard this. It is indeed as Yimeng said, as long as your imagination is unlimited, then your magical potential is also unlimited. If this really succeeds, card magic will definitely become one of the top magics in this world. Hey, are you kidding me? Indeed, this is outrageous. If this really succeeds, the entire world might change. This is the rhythm of opening a separate magic system. No, I doubt it will become mainstream. After all, whether it's traditional magic or possession magic, adaptability is crucial, especially for possession magic. Aside from the zodiac, how strong are the other possession items? But with card magic, just one card can allow you to use top-level magic, even the abilities of a top-level wizard. If nothing else, can you imagine how powerful you would be if you could simultaneously use all the magic of those S-class wizards in our guild? DB+. Not that weak. If I really had card magic like this, I'd even dare to fight for the top spot. However, just as everyone was marveling at how bright the future of card magic would be, two people were not as excited as they had imagined. The two people are Makarov and Kana, who has experience in making magic cards. It's not because they look down on it, but because they simply think it is almost impossible to achieve. In order to prevent these guys from suddenly having wild ideas and wasting their time studying card magic instead of doing their job, Makarov smothered their fantasies and said, "What are you thinking about? How can it be so simple?" Kana, who has already started making his own magic cards, also came out to explain. Current card magic can't even engrave and store magic from an entire attribute system at once, let alone more flexible and versatile ones. The difficulty of simply storing and engraving a single spell has already reached A level, let alone an entire system of magic. Why do you think that even though both types of magic are earth attributed, they have to be stored and engraved separately on separate cards? After hearing this, everyone realized that although Yi Ming's proposal was indeed very attractive, the technology was there, and the money was good, and it was almost impossible to realize it. Yi Ming just smiled at this and did not directly state that he already had a transformation card to prove that his proposal was just a simple delusion. Even if we don't consider this as the technology of the Type Moon world, the magic of the fairy tale world alone can make the transformation card possible. In the original novel, Wendy used additional magic to transform herself into Irene mode, thus gaining Irene's power. Therefore, if it is simply done by making cards, then it is definitely not possible with the current card-making technology, but it can be done if additional magic is added. When Kana saw Yi Ming's smiling face, her heart couldn't help but skip a beat. It's a little unbelievable. There's no way to really do this. Then Yi Ming said, "By the way, Kana, I'm very interested in making magic cards. Can you teach me?" Kana couldn't help but twitch her lips when she heard that, and said, "Well, okay, if you're interested." Biska, who was standing by, couldn't help but ask, "What's a good development path for firearms?" Although she believed that Yi Ming could directly help her improve her strength, she did not think that Yi Ming could teach her about the development of firearms. After all, guns and magic are different. Moreover, her sharpshooter's fighting style was different from that of a magician. Her weapon was more dependent on equipment and hit rate. In terms of combat effectiveness, it could be said that apart from improving the performance of weapons, there was almost no other way to improve her strength. However, as someone who can travel to various worlds, Yi Ming must have seen many sharpshooters, right? Therefore, if Yi Ming was just teaching her, she would not believe it. But if Yi Ming was knowledgeable and could provide her with inspiration and advice, then she would definitely want to get to know him better. Yi Ming touched his chin upon hearing this and asked, "Let me ask a few questions first to get a general understanding of your situation. First, what types of firearms do you use?" Upon hearing this, Biska also displayed the firearms he was using. Sniper rifles, shotguns, machine guns, bazookas. They are basically heavy-fire firearms, and combined with her extremely high hit rate, she could be considered one of the stronger ones even in the entire Ishgard. Moreover, in addition to using heavy firepower weapons, Biska himself also uses some firearms magic. For example, a bullet is fired, splitting into dozens of magic attacks with a wide range of attack. It can be said that Biska's firepower can perfectly heal the heart of a patient who suffers from a fear of insufficient firepower. Well, there's no problem with firepower for now. Then, what's your hit rate? Biska smiled contentedly upon hearing this and said, 100%. As long as I'm locked onto a target, there's no chance I won't hit it. Even when I was suppressed during the fight with Kaneo just now, it was only because the firearms I used were too weak. In addition, this kid's dynamic vision and strength were too ridiculous. It was simply a natural nemesis. Otherwise, there was no way she would have been able to intercept my attack. Although she was a little shocked at first, after being comforted by Kane Kocho, she realized that she had just met her nemesis. Kaneo, a humorous ability, can be said to be just the right thing to restrain her perfectly. However, Yimeng shook his head and said, if that's the case, then I can only give you a maximum hit rate of 80 points. After all, your attack can be intercepted. And since the attack can be intercepted, the hit rate naturally can't be considered 100% because your bullet didn't hit the target at all. If you can't make the bullet hit where you expect, you will also lose points. Of course, if you intend to judge your own strength by the standards of ordinary people, just ignore what I said. Biska, who was about to refute Yimeng, was choked by Yimeng's last sentence. Although Yimeng's words were a bit harsh, she also had to admit that if she only took ordinary people as the standard, then her hit rate was indeed 100%. But if she wants to reach higher peaks, then she naturally needs to set higher standards for herself. Did Biska only realize at this moment that he was so unmotivated before? No wonder she and Urza both use dress-up magic, but the difference in their abilities is so huge. Of course, part of the reason is that she was hit hard by the other party, so she gave up on herself. Afterwards, Yimeng also formally began to give the other party suggestions. Of course, these are some high-end opinions. After all, Biska's strength gives people a feeling of being neither better than the best, nor worse than the worst. Although his foundation is solid, he is completely unqualified to play in high-end games. Therefore, Yimeng also taught her some high-end shooting skills. The first and most basic thing is to enchant the bullets, so that in addition to having powerful attack power, they also have some special effects. After all, some targets can't be dealt with simply by attacking, like freezing bullets, paralysis bullets, and other control abilities. Even if it's just to broaden your abilities, you need to learn a little bit. Biska nodded in agreement upon hearing this and said, this is quite simple. We just need to order 10 guns that can fire special effect bullets. Yimeng raised his eyebrows upon hearing this and said, did you ask someone to make your weapons for you? Biska heard this and said as if it was a matter of course. Of course, I'm a gunsmith, not a blacksmith. I don't know how to make firearms or weapons. Yimeng also said somewhat helplessly, what if I tell you that those top sharpshooters basically make their own weapons? Biska and the others were all stunned when they heard Yimeng's words. Huh, to be a gunslinger, do you have to make your own weapons? Yimeng thought for a moment and said, how should I put it? The main thing is that only you know what kind of weapon is suitable for you, and only you can create a weapon that truly fits your hand. Do you understand what I mean? Unless that person is your personal blacksmith, the craftsmanship of the weapon will always be somewhat unsatisfactory. Or, no matter who makes the firearms or weapons, you can adapt to them instantly. Biska couldn't help but fall silent after hearing this. She certainly couldn't adapt instantly, as Yimeng said. At least she couldn't use the new weapon with ease. It would still take some time to get used to it. So the truly top-notch sharpshooters all forge their own weapons? Doesn't that mean she has to forge her own iron if she wants to become a true top-notch sharpshooter? Seeing Biska's suddenly worried look, Yimeng smiled and said, it doesn't mean that if you want to make your own weapons, you have to forge iron yourself with a hammer. Although I'm not sure if all weapons in your world are forged by blacksmiths, at least the ones I've met generally have their own toolboxes. They just need to set the parameters in advance, place the materials, and then they can forge with one click. Oh, right, Lala can make something like this. You can just ask Lala to make you a set later. But remember to make your requests clear to Lala, and remind her that she only wants the things you want, nothing else. Listening to Yimeng's suggestion, Biska couldn't help but twitch his lips and said, I understand. Although Lala's arrival saved the guild members a lot of money and time when they were on missions, it also caused trouble. In just a few days, the entire guild, except for those who happened to be out on missions, was basically stunned by Lala's invention. Even she is no exception. Therefore, it would take a lot of courage for her to go to Lala and ask her to make a set of tools specifically for her to make a magic gun. But in order to get closer to the peak, she must muster up the courage. After discussing the equipment, the next thing is technology. Most of them are fine, but it seems they won't ricochet. Ricochet? What's that? A phenomenon in which a person flies upwards by bouncing off the ground or other surface upon contact. If you can master this technique, then even if someone has the ability to intercept your bullet like Shineo, you will be able to constantly adjust and divert the trajectory of the bullet so that you can hit the target again. Even if it is intercepted, you can still hit the target, just like this. As he spoke, Yimeng also used his hands to simulate the flight trajectory of the bullet. Biska, who was watching from the side, also became very excited. Her biggest problem now is that even if she has a very high hit rate, she will be intercepted by some people with sharp eyesight. After all, although this type of firearm has extremely strong destructive power and flight speed since the moment it was manufactured, it has basically been fixed. It's difficult to continue to raise the village. At least the power can be improved by adjusting the bullet, but the flight speed of the ballistic trajectory is not so easy to improve. And this ricochet can just make up for this shortcoming. But it was obvious that even if she was a sharpshooter, it was not so easy for her to learn this level of shooting skills because there were so many things to consider. At this time, Yimeng also said, "Of course, if it were me, I would choose to increase firepower instead of hit rate." Biska was also stunned when he heard this and felt a little confused. No matter how powerful your firepower is, it's useless if you can't hit anyone, right? Yimeng smiled and said, "There's a saying in my place. If you're rich, you use firepower to cover your territory. If you're poor, you use precision strikes. When I cover this entire area with firepower, you'd better pray that you're fast enough to escape my attack range instantly. Otherwise, even a slight glimpse will kill you instantly." When everyone heard Yimeng's words, they couldn't help but gasp. Biska was speechless when he heard this and said, "Then I'll just continue with my precision strikes." Neither her magic power nor her financial resources could support her fighting style of using firepower to cover the enemy's territory. That's a good suggestion, but don't make it next time. Afterwards, Yimeng looked at Lockie again. Seeing the expectant look on his face, Yimeng said with a bit of a smile, "Well, I'm a little sorry. I haven't seen many people with wood attribute abilities, and even fewer with shaping magic like you." Asterisk 10. Speaking of which, are the types of wood you create fixed, or can they be customized? Lockie was also stunned when he heard this. Does it make any difference? Although she used wood shaping magic, she didn't know much about plants, so, in her opinion, there isn't much difference between plants. Yimeng heard this and said with a wry smile, "Different tree species have different materials and characteristics. Some plants are very hard and are suitable for making armor and shields. If we can add some softer plants inside, the shield's defensive capabilities can be further enhanced. Also, you can simulate the human body or the body structure of animals and use plants with different properties to replicate and create stronger plants and animals. So, if you want to increase the power of wood magic, it's best to first learn more about different types of trees, and then strive to make the plants you create have these characteristics. There's no need to create plants that have all the characteristics of other plants at once. You can master them one by one and then assemble them separately. Then consider creating them while casting magic to attack the enemy, and complete the assembly process until you can make the plants you create have these properties at once while casting magic. Besides that, since your magical attribute is plant, the plant creations you create cannot be separated from the characteristics of plants, such as taking root to absorb nutrients from the earth, photosynthesis, etc. You must learn to utilize the power of nature. When you have mastered the conditions I mentioned above, then by that time, you will probably be not far from becoming a saint. So the truly top-notch sharpshooters all forge their own weapons? Doesn't that mean she has to forge her own iron if she wants to become a true top-notch sharpshooter? Seeing Biska's suddenly worried look, Yi Meng smiled and said, "It doesn't mean that if you want to make your own weapons, you have to forge iron yourself with a hammer. Although I'm not sure if all weapons in your world are forged by blacksmiths, at least the ones I've met generally have their own toolboxes. They just need to set the parameters in advance, place the materials, and then they can forge with one click. Oh, right, Lala can make something like this. You can just ask Lala to make you a set later. But remember to make your requests clear to Lala, and remind her that she only wants the things you want, nothing else." Listening to Yi Meng's suggestion, Biska couldn't help but twitch his lips and said, "I understand." Although Lala's arrival saved the guild members a lot of money and time when they were on missions, it also caused trouble. In just a few days, the entire guild, except for those who happened to be out on missions, was basically stunned by Lala's invention. Even she is no exception. Therefore, it would take a lot of courage for her to go to Lala and ask her to make a set of tools specifically for her to make a magic gun. But in order to get closer to the peak, she must muster up the courage. After discussing the equipment, the next thing is technology. Most of them are fine, but it seems they won't ricochet. Ricochet? What's that? A phenomenon in which a person flies upwards by bouncing off the ground or other surface upon contact. If you can master this technique, then even if someone has the ability to intercept your bullet like Shineo, you'll be able to constantly adjust and divert the trajectory of the bullet so that you can hit the target again. Even if it is intercepted, you can still hit the target, just like this. As he spoke, Yi Meng also used his hands to simulate the flight trajectory of the bullet. Biska, who was watching from the side, also became very excited. Her biggest problem now is that even if she has a very high hit rate, she will be intercepted by some people with sharp eyesight. After all, although this type of firearm has extremely strong destructive power and flight speed since the moment it was manufactured, it has basically been fixed. It's difficult to continue to raise the village. At least the power can be improved by adjusting the bullet, but the flight speed of the ballistic trajectory is not so easy to improve. And this ricochet can just make up for this shortcoming. But it was obvious that even if she was a sharpshooter, it was not so easy for her to learn this level of shooting skills because there were so many things to consider. At this time, Yi Meng also said, "Of course, if it were me, I would choose to increase firepower instead of hit rate." Biska was also stunned when he heard this, and felt a little confused. No matter how powerful your firepower is, it's useless if you can't hit anyone, right? Yi Meng smiled and said, "There's a saying in my place. If you're rich, you use firepower to cover your territory. If you're poor, you use precision strikes. When I cover this entire area with firepower, you'd better pray that you're fast enough to escape my attack range instantly. Otherwise, even a slight glimpse will kill you instantly." When everyone heard Yi Meng's words, they couldn't help but gasp. Biska was speechless when he heard this and said, "Then I'll just continue with my precision strikes." Neither her magic power nor her financial resources could support her fighting style of using firepower to cover the enemy's territory. That's a good suggestion, but don't make it next time. Afterwards, Yi Meng looked at Lockie again. Seeing the expectant look on his face, Yi Meng said with a bit of a smile, "Well, I'm a little sorry. I haven't seen many people with wood attribute abilities, and even fewer with shaping magic like you. Asterisk 10. Speaking of which, are the types of wood you create fixed, or can they be customized?" Lockie was also stunned when he heard this. Does it make any difference? Although she used wood shaping magic, she didn't know much about plants, so, in her opinion, there isn't much difference between plants. Yi Meng heard this and said with a wry smile, "Different tree species have different materials and characteristics. Some plants are very hard and are suitable for making armor and shields. If we can add some softer plants inside, the shield's defensive capabilities can be further enhanced. Also, you can simulate the human body or the body structure of animals and use plants with different properties to replicate and create stronger plants and animals. So, if you want to increase the power of wood magic, it's best to first learn more about different types of trees and then strive to make the plants you create have these characteristics. There's no need to create plants that have all the characteristics of other plants at once. You can master them one by one and then assemble them separately. Then consider creating them while casting magic to attack the enemy, and complete the assembly process until you can make the plants you create have these properties at once while casting magic. Besides that, since your magical attribute is plant, the plant creations you create cannot be separated from the characteristics of plants, such as taking root to absorb nutrients from the earth, photosynthesis, etc. You must learn to utilize the power of nature. When you have mastered the conditions I mentioned above, then by that time, you will probably be not far from becoming a saint. After listening to Yi Meng's proposal, Loki's face flushed and she looked a little excited. She originally thought that the upper limit of her wood-shaping magic could only be this level, or that the upper limit of her potential could only be this level, but she didn't expect that her magic development was so shallow. Makarov, who was standing by, couldn't help but think of Warod Sequin, one of the 4 heavenly kings and the 10th founder of fairy tale. The magic used by this person is the magic of controlling plants. Although the plant magic methods used by Loki and this person are slightly different, they all use the same principle of controlling plants to fight. In fact, if Loki were to develop according to Yi Meng's 870 proposal, and if he could really reach this level in the future, then let alone becoming one of the 10 saints, even becoming one of the 4 heavenly kings would not be impossible. After all, their fairy tale guild already has a successful case study. However, the gap in magic talent between these 2 people is too big. Loki's magic talent is already at the limit of a level. It is difficult for him to become S level, let alone the 10 saints or even the 4 heavenly kings. Therefore, Makarov did not have much hope for Loki. Then, Makarov suddenly noticed Levi's resentful look. Text. Makarov naturally knew why Levi was like this. Is it just that she feels that it was because of him that not only did she lose face, but she also missed the chance to be taught by Yi Meng? Although his substitution in the middle of the game did prevent Levi from losing his resolve, he also missed an opportunity. Although judging by Yi Meng's current performance, if Levi could be shameless enough to ask for advice, then with Yi Meng's personality that likes beautiful women, she would probably not refuse. But the problem is that the kindness that was originally accepted without any psychological burden suddenly became something that required one to have a thick skin and to do 10 favors for the other party. Besides, it is not certain that they will agree. After all, although the beauty trick might indeed be effective on Yi Meng, with Levi's elementary school level figure, is she really capable of seducing Yi Meng? Even he expressed doubts about this. So it's better to just play the emotional card honestly. Afterwards, Makarov also handed Levi the 2 magic books that Yi Meng needed, and said, "These 2 magics are what Yi Meng specifically asked for." After hearing what Makarov said, Levi finally understood why President Makarov had asked him to go to the guild library to look for the magic books of these 2 spells. The Fairy Tale Guild also has a library, and it's quite large. But because of the atmosphere, apart from Levi, basically no one else in the guild is willing to come here to read. Now, this library can even be considered Levi's private territory. It's not because Levi has occupied this place, it's simply because no one wants to come. Even if there are books or information that they suddenly want to find, they basically ask Levi for help directly. Originally, he planned to give the 2 magic books to Yi Meng himself, but since that was the case, he decided to let Levi deliver them. It can be regarded as a reward and compensation to Levi. Just as Levi was about to give the 2 books to Yi Meng and take this opportunity to see if he could get some advice on improving his text magic, Lala and the others suddenly came back. "Yi Meng, you're back." As she spoke, Lala completely disregarded her image and threw herself directly into Yi Meng's arms, smiling happily. Hearing Lala's voice and feeling the delicate body of the beauty in his arms, Yi Meng couldn't help but smile and said, "Well, I just came back not long ago, and I plan to rest for a few days before doing the mission. We've almost finished all the tests. If you want to go on a mission with me later, you could do it any time." Yi Meng has never been a particularly hardworking person. Once he stops, he loses the motivation to continue working and needs to rest for a while before he can recover. Fortunately, Yimeng still has the mentality and habit of persevering, so it is not a big problem. Hearing Yimeng's words, Lala said happily, "Yes, sure, I want to visit other worlds too." "Are you Yimeng? Thank you for bringing Lee Sina back. If you need any help from me, please feel free to tell me." Hearing this strange yet pleasant voice, Yimeng subconsciously looked up. I saw a tall beauty walking towards me. She had flaming red hair, was wearing a suit of silver-white armor, and a blue short skirt and a pair of black boots. Although there was a gentle smile on his face, he exuded a majestic and powerful aura that made people dare not look directly at him. "Oh, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Urza Belsirian." "Yes, that's correct. It's Belsirian. Those who understand will understand. Irene and Urza will both accept it, and the plot on Irene's side will also be carefully revised." Yimeng was not surprised to see Urza, but the other party's surname made Yimeng feel very unbelievable. "Belsirian? Isn't that Scarlet?" In other words, Urza's past was also changed by herself by 1.8. Why did Yimeng, despite previously considering forming a new faction, show no intention of leaving Fairy Tail? The reason is very simple, because Yimeng knows very well that he will return to the past timeline of Fairy Tail in the future. In this case, some people will definitely intercept him in advance. People like Mavis and Irene will definitely not let go. So, since Fairy Tail is Mavis's guild, Yimeng will naturally not easily leave his future wife's territory unless she is willing to leave with him. So, after hearing Urza's self-introduction, Yimeng was surprised for a moment, but he quickly adjusted himself. Yimeng's reaction did not escape Urza's eyes. She smiled helplessly and said, "Are you showing this expression because you have seen me in another world? I am Urza in this world, the fairy queen of Fairy Tail." She had seen this kind of reaction from Mira Jane and Serena, the sisters in another world, as well as from Lala and the others, so Urza immediately guessed why Yimeng had this reaction. Yimeng was stunned for a moment when he heard this. Then he smiled and said, "Although I have heard Lee Sina talk about it before, it still feels a little unbelievable when I actually see it." Urza also said with anticipation, "Yeah, I also want to go and see what kind of existence I am in another world as soon as possible." After Lee Sina came back, Urza also got to know her other self through Serena from another world. She never imagined that she, who is determined to become the guardian of Fairy Tail in this world, will become a fairy hunter specializing in hunting fairies in another 23rd world. However, because Yimeng passed on the method of producing energy other than magic to the Fairy Tail in another world, the self in the other world also seemed to have the intention of becoming a guardian of the fairies. In addition, Lee Sina was also brought back by Yimeng, so Urza, who attaches great importance to her companions, also has a very high liking for Yimeng, a benefactor she has never met. However, what Urza didn't know was that what really surprised Yimeng was her last name. After all, everyone who has watched the anime Fairy Tail subconsciously assumes that Urza's last name is Scarlet, and this is also the officially confirmed surname. However, only a few people who know the truth know that Urza's real surname is actually Belsirian. After all, Irene was just marrying in through an arranged marriage, not marrying in. It could even be said that the man was marrying in, so Urza's real surname could only be Belsirian. Moreover, as someone with the blood of the sky dragon, Yimeng also possessed the sense of smell of a dragon. He smelled the pure and rich aura of dragon in Elsa. This level of purity and richness was almost equivalent to saying that Urza was a dragon man like herself. "You also know dragon-slaying magic?" Hearing Yimeng's words, Urza smiled as expected and said, "As expected, you are also a dragon slayer? But you seem to be more like me." From the moment he got close to Yimeng, Urza also felt the same dragon-human aura from Yimeng as himself. There are other dragon auras in the guild as well, such as Natsu, but he only possesses them because he has Dragon Slayer. But it is obvious that Natsu is just a wizard who can use dragon-slaying magic, so he has the breath of a dragon. The aura around when he felt like something between her and Natsu, and it felt like he was constantly considering her. But Urza still couldn't understand Natsu, because he had 3 kinds of auras. humans, demons, dragons. This is what she discovered after coming into contact with Mira Jane. Moreover, she even discovered that although the demonic aura emanating from Natsu seemed to be weaker than that of humans and dragons on the surface, its quality was superior to both. So rather than saying it was weak, it would be better to say that it was hidden or had not yet awakened. She didn't know what was going on, but seeing that Natsu was no different from a normal person except that he was a little bit stupid, she didn't pay much attention to it. And now, when she saw Yi Ming, who had a similar aura to her, she felt like a fellow villager meeting a fellow villager. Coupled with the various buffs he had received before, this also made Urza have a very good impression of Yi Ming. Well, I used the Holy Dragon Slayer magic, which has a natural advantage in light attributes and additional magic. You should use the same Sky Dragon Slayer magic as Wendy, right? Yi Ming nodded and said, yes, the same Sky Dragon as Wendy. Yi Ming was not surprised that Urza's Dragon Slayer magic attribute was holy. After all, Irene is the holy dragon who inherited Belsirian's power, and if Urza inherits Irene's complete bloodline, then the possibility of inheriting Dragon Slayer magic is very high. P.S. What exactly is the attribute of this Xian? I can only guess that it is auxiliary. Yi Ming then noticed something and asked, by the way, did you guys just come back together? Did you team up to do a mission together? Lala nodded and said, yeah, we want to do an S-rank commission mission. Urza, standing by, said with a look of emotion, this is the easiest S-rank commission I've ever taken. If I hadn't had the commission in my hands, I'd have wondered if I'd taken the wrong one. Out of gratitude to Lala and the others, Urza saw that Lala liked to go to various places to do commission tasks. In addition, Lala and the others were even stronger than himself, so Urza took Lala and the others to do high-level S-level commission tasks. Although Lala and the others had about the same experience as the newcomers as guild wizards, they were not only powerful, but also possessed a variety of abilities, making them truly almighty. So even though they were undertaking an S-rank commission this time, their powerful strength meant that it was no different from an ordinary A-rank commission. This was also the first time she felt that an S-level commission was such a simple matter. Normally, an S-level commission mission would take at least half a month to complete, and at most 1 or 2 months. However, with Lala and the others, it only took 2 or 3 days. In fact, during these 2 or 3 days, most of the time was spent playing, and the time I actually started working was only less than half a day.
Hello, everyone. As we wrap up this video, I want to share a quick note. I have a Patreon account. If you'd like to support me and enjoy on-demand audiobooks, you can become a Patreon member. Alternatively, you can check out my Google Drive link, which has 500+ novel audiobooks available through my Ko-fi or Patreon shop. I appreciate your support.